has been hallowed by some sad or happy event in days long vanished. Chief Seattle, 1854.
Thank you very much. Now would you everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next thing on our agenda is to review the agenda, and as far as I know, the agenda is as stands. We don't have any changes. So we will move right on to comments from, motion to approve.
Madam Mayor, move to approve the agenda as presented. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. McVeigh.
McVeigh, aye.
Lived aye.
Eckert, aye.
Newell, aye.
Pro aye.
Stern, aye.
Tabor, aye.
You know, I run a bunch of different meetings and some of them approve the agenda by motion and others don't. So anyway, moving right along here. Now we are going to move on to comments from citizens. If you have comments for the council, please step to the podium. You have 3 minutes and state your name for the record.
Good evening, Mayor Erickson and council members. My name is Irene Bowie and I'm a resident of Poulsbo. I'm here to speak again tonight to ask the council to consider putting the preservation zoning for manufactured home parks on your agenda. I'm representing a good majority of the people at Viking Park, and I know that the other parks, the other 2 parks in the city and also members of the community are looking more and more in favor of this type of zoning protection for an existing form of affordable housing that you have here in the city. So I hope you will consider that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Comments from citizens.
Good evening, everybody. Mayor, council members. My name is Mike Perry, and I'm going to try and make this in 3 minutes. This is in regards to the ongoing discussion of paid parking in Poulsbo. And here are several reasons why enforcement of current parking time limits is a better approach to addressing parking availability challenges compared to charging for parking without increased parking supply. Number one, it improves turnover without additional costs. Enforcing existing parking time limits encourages turnover, ensuring more people can use the available parking spaces. This approach maximizes existing resources without requiring costly implementation of payment systems or new infrastructure. 2, supports local businesses. High parking turnover benefits local businesses by making parking more accessible to their customers. Charging for parking could deter visitors, reducing foot traffic and potentially harming businesses, especially small ones. 3, avoids burdening residents and visitors. Charging for parking places a financial burden on residents and visitors, potentially discouraging them from coming to the area. Enforcing time limits achieves better parking availability without imposing additional costs. Number 4, promotes fair use of parking spaces. Time limits prevent long-term parking in high-demand areas, ensuring equitable access for more users. Enforcement ensures that spaces are used for short-term parking as intended. 5, reduces administrative overhead. Enforcement of existing terms is often simpler and less expensive than implementing and maintaining paid parking systems, which require meters, digital payment platforms, and ongoing maintenance. 6, minimizes public resistance. Introducing parking fees often faces resistance from the community. Focusing on enforcement of time limits is less likely to provoke opposition as it aligns with the existing terms and expectations. 7, maintains accessibility for low-income users. Charging for parking can disproportionately affect low-income individuals, making it harder for them to access essential services. Enforcing time limits maintains accessibility without introducing financial barriers. Number 8, encourages efficient parking behavior. Time limit enforcement encourages users to plan their visits and use parking spaces efficiently, reducing the time spent searching for parking. Number 9, avoids the risk of underutilization in some areas. Charging for parking can lead to underutilized spaces if users choose to avoid fees entirely. Enforcing time limits ensures consistent use without deterring users. 10, and the last point I'll make, facilitates better data collection. Enforcement of time limits provides opportunities to collect data on parking habits and usage patterns. This data can guide future decisions on whether additional parking spaces or policy changes are necessary. By focusing on enforcement of existing parking time limits, cities and communities can address parking challenges in a way that is cost-effective, equitable, and more acceptable to the public. In closing, I encourage the mayor and city council to reach out to Bainbridge Island because they currently have parking enforcement individuals who are not sworn peace officers and have a policy in place which could be adopted by the city of Poulsbo as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Comments from citizens?
Good evening. I'm Colleen Myko, manager of Bremerton Kids Have Access Television. BCAT is the public access channel for the city of Poulsbo, other cities, and Kitsap County. I'm here to provide a quick update on how we serve the community in 2024. And that is this handout right here. Most know BCAT from our service contract with the city of Poulsbo to provide live video coverage of this and other meetings. BCAT covers 14 different regular meetings for 9 agencies. In 2024, we recorded and aired 242 meetings. 36 of those were Poulsbo City Council. Government meetings were 53% of our new program airtime on the channel. We also provide a unique non-commercial venue for the public to express their passions and opinions on TV. 40% of our new content was created independently by community producers who submitted 597 programs to air on BCAT last year alone. BCAT original programming created in-house was 8% of our new content. We spotlight positive hyperlocal stories not covered elsewhere in the media. We assist citizens and nonprofits in getting what's important to them on BCAT, even if they lack the technical skills or equipment. We do that through our membership services program and our production studio near the Kitsap Fairgrounds. The cities, including Poulsbo and Kitsap County, appoint volunteer representatives to serve on the BCAT Community Advisory Committee, and we're grateful to these individuals that you have appointed. You can watch BCAT on Comcast Channel 12, stay on Channel 3, live stream from anywhere at bcat.org. Video demand for all the government meetings we cover can also be found at bcat.org, conveniently indexed so that citizens can go directly to the agenda items that are most important to them each week. Our BCAT YouTube channel is available anytime. I also want to extend an invitation to each of you, to staff and the public, to attend our BCAT open house that we're having on the 27th from 3:30 to 6:30 p.m. at BCAT. And I have given you guys this flyer also. It's a great way to learn more about BCAT, our video services, and acquire about video ideas, and learn more about it at our Facebook page. And I'm always available to provide a more detailed briefing regarding how BCAT and the city of Poulsbo partner to bring community television to the citizens of Poulsbo. Thank you for your support and collaboration and your time tonight.
Thank you very much. Comments from citizen?
Hi, my name is Megan Martin. I am a shopkeeper down on Front Street. Before that, I was a part-time employee down on Front Street, starting back in 2007. I bought a business in 2018, and I've been a shopkeeper down there since then. And I and my husband are now commercial real estate owners down on Front Street, just as of less than a year ago. I know it doesn't mean much, but I put out on my Instagram this fun little question to my friends. I grew up here. I grew up in Kingston, husband's from Poulsbo, grandma came from Norway, the whole story, right? Well, I put on there a few weeks ago after I was at the HDPA meeting here, and I said, hey, the city is thinking of doing paid parking. I cannot tell you how many of my dear friends, colleagues, acquaintances, all expressed to me either A, they maybe didn't know, or they had heard a little buzz, but each one of them expressed immense concern over this. I heard my friends, I will tell you, I am 41 years old. I'm a demographic of a customer on Front Street. I have 3 children, like many of my friends, and many of them are fellow business owners, but they might not be on Front Street. But I will tell you, if the paid parking goes into effect, there will be numerous people who will not stop downtown. You may not know who my friends are, but they're my customers, they're their customers. They benefit the city of Poulsbo. So I just want to say, if I can speak from my heart, that I know I'm the new kid on the block, quite literally, but this is me sharing my heart to please, please, please listen to us shopkeepers and small local business owners. Thank you for your time.
Comments from citizens? Last call. Anyone? Okay, seeing and hearing none, we are going to move on to mayor's reports and council comments. I can't believe you're all here. It's been 2 months since you've all been, it's been a long time. So, Mr. McVeigh, how are you this evening?
I'm good, thank you, Mayor. Recently returned from California, and so you can thank me for this beautiful sunny weather we're having. I hear you had a little snow and ice while I was gone. I'm glad to miss that. Thank you to Public Works for keeping the streets and the sidewalks clear. I hear everything went pretty smoothly, as considering how much ice and snow that we got. Thank you to everybody who made citizen comments tonight. I'm hopeful that the folks who express their opinions about downtown parking can stay for that part of the meeting tonight, hear the conversation. And I would just, just to make sure everybody remembers and everybody's clear, yes, one of the things we are considering is charging a nominal fee for the closest in parking spaces in particularly the Anderson Parkway lot. Spaces in King Olaf, the City Hall ramp, Third Avenue, elsewhere would remain free. So it's sort of a first class coach model, if you will. There are some people that would be willing to pay to park closer. And I think one of the things we're looking at is what does that help the spaces turn over more frequently and help our downtown businesses? Because we have a big problem with too many employees parking in the Anderson Parkway lot for hours at a time, taking away spaces for paying customers. That's not good for our downtown. That's not good for anybody. So these are some of the things that we're grappling with. We've been at it for 2 years. I appreciate people like Mr. Perry who have hung in there with us for the last 2 years, expressing his opinion, and others have as well. But I do think we are getting to a point where we need to make a decision one way or the other. And I am looking forward to tonight's discussion. Thank you to everybody else who made comments. And I would also, since it's my first meeting here with Rob Gelder as our new city administrator, I would like to welcome Rob officially to City Hall. Thrilled that he has joined the city in that position and looking forward to working with him as well as my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Livedall,
I'm going to reserve my comments for later.
Mr. Eckert.
Yeah, first of all, I want to repeat thanks to Public Works for keeping our streets clean from the snow and ice, but also to go a little further back, and thanks for the cleanup of all the signs. I reached out and thanked Mike directly already, but I want to do it publicly because I personally think the city looks so much better having cleared away all the mostly abandoned signs that we had laying out there. So thanks again. Thank your guys for all the hard work they did, your folks for all the hard work they did. And then just quick to share 2 events recently that I attended on behalf of the city. One was 3 actually. One was a AWC Association of Washington Cities training on mobile home and manufactured home parks. Some of the city staff was also online for that, which was a very interesting, very informative presentation on not just changing zoning and land use rules, also on resident-owned communities, I think is what the acronym stood for, but things that have been being done around the state by other communities and by an organization that helps the residents if they choose to purchase the property that they live on. Very interesting, a lot of good information for us to consider. Some good questions in there. I asked one about how many of the residents of the park have to want to buy in order for that to go forward. And there were a couple other questions along that vein. So we got some good information now to help us look into what's possible, what's probable, and what is likely. So that was very interesting. And then I attended two of Representative Nance's town halls on ferries over the last 2 weekends here in our city hall and as well as over on Bainbridge. And very interesting. Folks were not easy on on Greg, which is fair because this ferry issue has been coming for a long time and he's tackled it. And so he took some hard questions. But what I found very interesting, particularly from our neighbors on Bainbridge, is that the tide seems to be turning to we are less concerned about seeking the perfect solution and we are more concerned about getting holes in the water. And we don't care what drives those holes. That seemed to be a predominant message at the Bainbridge meeting, and I thought pretty strongly voiced here in Poulsbo, because folks are more concerned that we don't end up with less than the boats we have now trying to get to a solution for all electric boats, and it gets worse. So that's a message that Greg took to heart and was going to take back to Olympia and see if we can't do something to increase the number of ferries total while we still pursue the goals that they set. So, but he listened, and I said he got some hard questions, and I think I thank folks for coming out because that's a issue that hits all of our communities in the Sound. But really, it's a statewide issue, and that's a message he's trying to convey. And I keep pushing. It's really a statewide issue. It's not just a Puget Sound issue. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Eckert. Mr. Newell, no comments. Ms. Crowe, go ahead.
Yes, in brief, I appreciate the comments that were shared, everything from the mobile home parks to the parking, and then Big Cat's wonderful update and invite. I do want to say that I am sorry that I did miss the council meeting the week of the 15th or January 15th, as well as the parking meeting. I ended up coming down with the flu, so getting caught up on a lot of things. But thank you for your comments and being here.
Thank you. Mr. Stern.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I have one slide if the clerk is able to put that up on the screen. I'd like to join my colleagues and Councilman McVeigh's remarks and acknowledge and remark on Rob Gelder, our new city administrator in a brand new position. I'd like to welcome him in from the dark side of the universe called county government, kidding, and welcome him to city government. You look great in that seat and we're glad to have you, Rob. The mayor and I were able to attend the chamber luncheon today, and it was Virginia Mason Franciscan Hospitals. And that is Allie who presented this slide. There was a group, Mayor, of about 5 or 6 mid-level management from the organization. And the reason this is relevant, besides it was presented today, it was on Building Tomorrow's Healthcare, partnership with Olympic College in Kitsap County. And that's relevant for a couple of reasons. It's noted on here again, they donated $2.5 million to the $10 million effort that's being built up on the Hill right now, with our college campus in Poulsbo being converted to a regional allied health center that the mayor's had an instrumental role in on the health district and other boards, calling attention to our healthcare crisis in this county, in fact. There's a groundbreaking this Friday, Valentine's Day at 10 a.m. and we're all invited. And I just found out from President Cavalucci that our new congresswoman for the 6th congressional district will be attending. So if any of you, again, could look at your calendars, and even if it's for an hour, attend and make that contact with our new congresswoman, that's an opportunity. Again, our clerk would need to know because she would notice for him, but certainly the mayor and I will be there. The mayor will be making some remarks. It's obviously a big deal for our community, besides the jobs being created, that our small college campus is growing. And as the slide here notes, they're expecting within 3 to 4 years, over 600 students a year through that one facility. And so we're going to be looking at all kinds of challenges, including perhaps dormitory and housing and other support services as we slowly work our way to being a small college town. So on that note, I wanted to also share that at the steering committee, the mayor and I sit on in Bremerton with the college, they're needing to stand up an outside group to handle the fundraising, marketing, and promotion of this effort. They're looking at raising some $70 million for a second building here in Poulsbo for Olympic College. And the mayor and we looked at each other, and she acted spontaneously to take part of her discretionary funds, $5,000, and use as seed money to their goal of raising
No,
25,000.
What I did is I said, I'm gonna do $5,000, and then I pointed to everybody
Yeah,
else
do
around the table and said, are you, are you, are you? It was, I pushed them into it.
It was
That's what I
much
did.
appreciated, Mayor, because it was the leverage to the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance, again, Virginia Mason standing up, and a number of other groups. And a scope of work was presented to the Finance Department. And so I just wanted to note the mayor's contribution out of her discretionary funds and make sure council's aware of that. We don't need to give concurrence, but it could be later in the year, there might need to be some replenishing of that fund.
Could very well be. Yeah, it's bottom line, I should be okay, but I might want to come back and get a little more. It actually should come out of other than something like that, because we've been working on this I've been working on this for 2 years.
Yes.
So it's been a long time.
And then in conjunction with that, there's a small task force being put together to go out to Spokane, which 20 years ago, in cooperation with the city, Washington State University, and other groups created that medical hub center training that called the University Center down by the river in Spokane. And that looks like a bigger model of what the college, Olympic College, is trying to create here. So I'm going to be using my travel budget. I know the mayor's invited, but it's a hardship right now because of family demands. That will include Harriet Bryant, who's the chair of the trustees, Mark Hughes, who's with the foundation board, Carrie Bozeman with the Port of Bremerton, Chad Melton, who's the regional director of Virginia Mason Franciscan Hospitals, Joe Morrison with Kitsap Economic Development Alliance, Katie Walters with the County Commission, Mr. Gilfetter with Kitsap Credit Union, and Comcast and a group of others. So the idea is to sit down and really meet with a group called McKinstry, which is one of the leading engineering consulting firms on the West Coast that played an instrumental role, and see if we can involve them in this as well. So I'll end on the note of, again, extending an invitation to my colleagues. If you can be up at Olympic College, Poulsbo, 10 a.m. on Friday, even for part of that ceremony, to let our city clerk know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stern.
Is that trip planned already, or is it just tentative for the summertime?
No, it's planned. Thank you. The dates are March 5 and 6. So I'm going to be missing a council meeting at the beginning of March.
Okay. So spring, not summer.
It's immediate. Yeah.
Okay. I was wondering if it'd be close to our conference in Tri-Cities, that it could be tied together, but I was just gonna add, if I know it's about the health center, but if you or Becky, if you have a moment to bend Representative Randall's ear about our post office concerns.
Oh, heavens, yes.
If you could,
Good
if you
idea,
could,
Rick.
you know,
Thank you.
she probably hasn't heard them. And so, you know, the possibility of relocating out of the city, the majority of the services, that would be, maybe that could be her first bill as a brand new representative, would get a new, you know, work on a new North Kitsap
Councilmember
post
Ecker, no
office.
way for you to make it if we write you an excuse note. for
I've
disability
already
service.
taken a little too much time off for the city in February, so I won't be able to make it.
Okay, is that it, Mr. Stern? Yeah. Mr. Tabor?
First, I'd like to thank our community members for speaking today and congratulate Rob Gelder publicly. Thanks, Rob, and welcome. Thanks for joining us and welcome aboard. And congratulations to Ed on pulling this and, like, you know, bringing this together and announcing it. And it sounds like a great Valentine's gift for you. I plan on being there, and I told my wife that we're going to a romantic groundbreaking, so we'll see how that goes over for me. And also really look forward to diving into the parking project. We have lots of recommendations, lots of information on that. I've been going back quite a few years to look at what's been recommended and what's been discussed on that matter. So looking forward to the conversation later on that.
Thank you, Mr. Tabor. under my comments, there are two proclamations here and I was going to read them, but I think everybody can read them themselves. We've got a lot of stuff that we have to do this evening. I think the most important thing I would like to say is I want to welcome Rob. Rob Gelder was North Kitsap County Commissioner for 12 years. And he and I worked very closely as when he was commissioner. I couldn't be more thrilled than to have him here as our City of Poulsbo's first city administrator. We are already working hand in glove. And I can frankly, I can feel some of the stress coming off already, which is, it's really a good feeling. So I'm very appreciative of you being here, Rob. And you're going to do, I know you already are doing a fabulous job. So thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Other than that, I think I have a lot of other stuff that's going on, but we have a long agenda. So I think we should just move on into board, commission and outside agency reports. Does anybody have any board, commission and outside agency reports?
Mayor, just to know for the record, there was a Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council meeting a week ago last Tuesday. And then the previous week, our ad hoc group of council from Poulsbo met with the ad hoc group with the city of Bainbridge Island at Bainbridge Island City Hall. So I just wanted to place that on the record.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Stern. Any other reports? Okay, seeing none, we're going to moving on to item 7, which is the consent agenda. All matters decision with the consent agenda have been distributed to each member of the city council for reading and study and are considered to be routine. And it is items 7A through F, and I'd entertain a motion unless somebody wants to remove something.
Madam Mayor, move to approve consent agenda items A through F.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Mr. McVeigh.
McVeigh, aye.
Vidal, aye.
Eckert, aye.
Newell, aye.
Pearl, aye.
Stern, aye.
Tabor, aye.
Thank you, council. And now we're on to the business agenda. And the first is Planning and Parks and Recreation Commission appointments. And this is Rhiannon. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The mayor has appointed the following commission members and seeks council concurrence tonight. We have Parks and Recreation Commission, Kim Peterson, who will be filling the vacated position with a term expiring December 31st, 2025. And then Joey Sollard, who has an appointment to the Planning Commission with a term expiring December 31st, 2030. And I believe Joey's here tonight to speak with you.
Joey, would you like to step forward and say a few words?
Hi, good evening. I'm Joey Solar from Poulsbo here. First thing I want to say is I am just really overwhelmed with the high level of performance in the onboarding to this planning position here as commissioner. It's just been incredible. And the reason I'm here is sort of my past, present, and future. So in the past, growing up in various areas, I was part of the growth in Seattle, knowing Seattle's in liquefaction, growing up across on Lake Washington, where we had methane gas coming out of the ground from old dump sites that were put into the lake. And even in the work that I do now, I'm the director of commercial over at KW Greater 360. I was grown up in a family where my father did all his own development. So I've always, I'm always in tennis shoes or Grundens or have a machete with me, some real boots on the ground. But I've seen through the years how important it is when you're starting to look at zoning overlays and usage and all of the components that go with planning that has been in the past that's trying to meld itself even into our today and into our future. So as I'm starting to work with our clients, we work with the zoning, the uses that they're coming into, all the way Bremerton. I pretty much cover the whole Puget Sound area. But what's really important to me too is what's going on with our water. And there are areas where I'll be out on the beach walking. Maybe all of a sudden you'll see a rush of water come out with bubbles. And there's still sewage and washing machines and things like that getting pumped into areas. So planning all from sea to sky, to me is just super important. I love the vision of Poulsbo. I love our rural areas. I like the collaboration that's here in the community, and I'm really excited to be a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome aboard. Okay, there is a motion, and I would entertain motion to confirm.
I'll make the motion.
Sure.
Motion to confirm the mayor's appointments to the Planning Commission and Parks and Recreation Commission as presented.
Second? You have a motion and a second for appointing Joey Solar to the Planning Commission and Kim Peterson to the Parks and Rec Commission. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Mr. McVeigh.
McVeigh, aye.
Lived all aye.
Eckert, aye.
Newell, aye.
Pro I.
Thank you for your public service. Stern, aye.
Tabor, aye.
Thank you, council. Now we are moving on to the West Poulsbo Stormwater Retrofit Project Bid Opening Contract Award, and this is Charlie. And is this what we have in our, no, we have in our teal folder, the curb ramp. So this is another one. So go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, got a really brief presentation here, make it pretty quick. So this is the West Poulsbo Stormwater Retrofit Project. It's located over in Nelson Park, and we opened bids pretty recently, and so this is the award for construction contract. This is a grant-funded stormwater project with the goal of enhancing water quality to Liberty Bay. We've gotten a couple of ecology funds to first do the design and then do construction. So I've been working on that the past couple of years. For construction, we got a little bit over $1 million from ecology with a $200,000 city match. And we advertised the project and opened bids on January 31st. We had a good interest, 10 responsive bidders with a range of about 750,000 to 1.2 million. Our engineer's estimate was 930,000, and Vet Industrial was the low bidder with a bid of a 753,000. They're a local construction company, never worked with us before, but based out of Bremerton, do a lot of work in the area. So we're excited to work on this project with them. Looking at our budget, the bids came in pretty low, and so we've got plenty of budget to do the project and move forward with a healthy contingency and construction management, well within the budget. And with that, I'd entertain any questions and look for a motion.
Any question, Mr. McVeigh?
Thank you, Mayor. Charlie, thank you for the report and the background materials. I'm thrilled that we had 10 bidders. As I think my colleagues know, we have not been having a great number of bidders for some of our projects. I think for the Play for All Park, for instance, we only had 2 bidders, as I recall, which it was quite a bit above our engineer's estimate. So I'm just kind of wondering, is there any rhyme or reason why we had 10 bids on this project compared to some other ones?
Well, I can speculate.
Okay.
I think it's the time of year is one. We did it right at the beginning of the new year, so when contractors are kind of planning their work out. We also had 3 other projects out at the same time, or a similar time, so more work in the area. And then the other thing with this project is we provided the contractor a flexible start date. So we gave him a deadline of May 31st as a last start date. And I don't know how much that plays into it or not, but I think it provides some flexibility. And so, yeah.
Thank you.
I
Appreciate it.
was really happy with it.
Unless there are other questions, I'm happy to make a motion, Mayor. Rick?
Yeah, Charlie, I just said, so on the map, project map, it shows there is a phase 2 further south. And I just wanted to, you showed the total project, the total construction budget of 1,260,000. Is that for both phases, or is there a separate budget for the second phase?
No, the second phase we're not proceeding with at this time. When in the design, we looked at that site. It's the 3 park or the 4 park parcels on I think it's Bay Street over there. And we purchased that with the intention of building a stormwater park, and then we got into the stormwater design and did some survey and some analysis and realized that basin's a lot smaller, and we wouldn't be able to meet our commitment to ecology with the project on that location without
Okay.
substantial rework on biking. And so we kind of shifted gears through the design process and shifted to Nelson Park, which has a stormwater facility that doesn't work super great. And so we're going to retrofit that, and it turned out to be a really good project.
Okay, thank you.
And you're gonna eliminate what looks like the Great Tundra, but it's kind of rocking and rolling over there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a little swampy and a little blackberry-y.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, any other questions? Charlie. Mr. McVeigh, would you like to make the motion?
Sure. Move to award the construction contract for the West Poulsbo Stormwater Retrofit Project in the amount of $753,243.29 to Vet Industrial, and authorize the mayor to sign the contract on behalf of the city, and authorize the mayor to sign change orders up to 10% of contract value.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other questions or conversations about this motion? Hearing and seeing none. Mr. McVeigh.
McVeigh, aye.
Goodell, aye.
Eckert, aye. Bill, aye.
Pearl, aye.
Stern.
Tabor, aye.
Thank you very much, council. Now
Thank you.
we are moving on to the ADA curb ramp upgrades project construction contractor award, and this is Josh Rains.
Good evening. Bear with me, I'll pull the presentation up here.
Now, this was what is in our teal folders, correct?
That's correct. Now,
Okay.
I'll give a brief update as to why that is. Okay, so we opened bids on this project on Friday, so we did not have the bid results at the time of putting together the package. So what you have in front of you there is the bid results as well as the contract for the contractor. So I'll go through just a really quick summary of the project. And you guys have seen this before. I'll remind you that we did receive a grant from TIB, the Transportation Improvement Board, for $600,000. So we went through our transition plan, our adopted ADA transition plan, and selected different locations for these curb ramp replacements, looking at what's the biggest need, the most popularly used areas, and looking at areas that needed a continuous route for connection to different resources such as medical facilities or downtown shopping or other networks. Some were left out due to future planned projects, and we couldn't get to the entire city, obviously, with the limited funding. So we looked at it from two different perspectives. We had a base bid of 35 curb ramps, and then we looked at adding an additional 12 curb ramps. So we did that as a bid additive. So we advertised the project on January 17th, and we opened bids on Friday, February 7th. And here we are tonight. And when we're looking at construction, hopefully trying to get it at the end of this month. I know I listed mid-March here, and we have a total of 50 working days in the contractor, and already in communication with the low bidder. They believe that they can get it done quicker than that 50 working days. So to go over the bid opening results, we did receive 6 bids. Our base bid range was $465,000 to $763,000. With the additive, we looked at a total range of $630,000 to just over $1 million. So our lowest responsive bidder was Asphalt Patch Systems with a base bid of $465,000, and then an additive for $165,000, giving us a total of almost $630,000. So our engineer's estimate for our base bid was $500,000, and the bid additive was $200,000. And with that, we recommend just based on budget, we recommend awarding just the base bid contract. And this is a little bit about our budget of what we've spent so far with our survey and design and our construction contract with a contingency of 10%, construction management of 10%, giving us a total construction cost of $558,000, total project cost of just over $700,000, and it is within budget. Now, just to speak a little bit to the TIB contract, for the $600,000, we've been busy, and so we're a little bit behind schedule here, and we are limited to a March 25th deadline for construction of the project, meaning that TIB will only pay for construction cost or design cost, which was already past us, up to March 25th. So we will be working with our contractor to mobilize as quick as possible and get them out there on construction. Anything after the March 25th cost would come from our additional budget that we have here in the city.
and I can answer any other additional questions on that.
Okay, questions? Go ahead, Mr. McVeigh.
Thanks, Mayor. Josh, is the timeline the reason that we're not pursuing the additive?
Well, both the timeline and the additional costs. So the bid additive would put us beyond our current budget and would require us to come back for an additional budget amendment.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Eckert?
Yeah, just, two questions. The first question, comment, concern, I brought it up before. A number of these look like they're down along Front Street. So just, with the idea that we know we're going to do things at Front Street. So, keeping in mind, we don't want to spend money on something that we're gonna tear up again in the near future. I know you have that in mind, but just putting it out there again. So making sure we factor that in what we do. And then for timing, you kind of answered, we have an end date here we have to work on with mid-March, but being that a lot of the rest of these are clustered around the school zone, I always hope to do any construction if possible around schools when the kids aren't there. So I don't know how you plan to stagger with them as far as, obviously they're not going to do all this at one shot. They're going to be rolling from one, if we can factor that in, or if you've already got that in mind.
No, thank you for asking the question, Rick. So I did bring the map back up here. So these dots on the map here highlight all the ones that we evaluated for the project. They don't necessarily represent the base bid 35 curb ramps. The dots there are about 70 curb ramps or so. So the ones near the school on CalDART are not in the base bid.
Any more questions for Josh?
I might, if I could, Mayor, just make a comment here. As we've been discussing the downtown parking issue, one of the first solutions people sometimes would like to jump to is, why can't we get a grant and build a parking ramp for more parking spaces downtown? The answer to that is because no one is giving grants for parking ramps. We can get grants for ADA improvements to curbs. We can get grants for new streets with urban walking paths, bike lanes. But federal government and state government for some time now has been focusing on, if you will, getting people out of cars, not funding grants for parking garages, parking ramps. So if we are to build more parking in downtown Poulsbo, it is going to be up to us to fund that. I just want to make that very clear. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McVeigh. Okay, so the motion in front of you is up here on your screen, and I would entertain a motion from someone. Go ahead, Brittany.
Mayor, I move to award the contract for the Complete Streets Curb Ramp Upgrades Project to Asphalt Patch Systems in the amount of $465,010 and authorize the mayor to execute the contract and sign change orders up to 10% of the contract value.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any questions or concerns about the motion? Seeing and hearing none, Mr. McVeigh.
McVeigh, aye.
Lived aye.
Eckert, aye.
Newell, aye.
Pro, aye.
Stern, aye.
Tabor, aye.
Thank you, council. I don't know, gremlins in the wires, Brooke. What can I say? So, with that, that is the end of our business agenda. It is 5:44. We will start our workshop at 6 o'clock. And council, there's some food down there if you'd like some. Thank you. ahead and get this going again. Mr. Stern, are you ready? Okay. Just keep. Ed, come on, it's 6 o'clock. Okay, the first thing on the workshop agenda is department head comments. So who wants to go first? I think I'm gonna kick it over to our new city administrator. Go ahead, Rob.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a pleasure to be here and I appreciate all the kind words that everyone shared. It's been great and I liken it to coming home. There's so much familiarity, not only with a lot of the issues, with the community, with the staff, that has just been a comfort that you don't usually get when you start a new job. So it's actually been phenomenal and I appreciate that. But I also want to share that something that you all know is that you have a phenomenal team of professionals leading this organization on behalf of the residents of the city. And I've had the opportunity over the past 3 weeks to conduct approximately 45 interviews or meetings with council, department heads, and frontline staff to really get a sense of where we are at, where everyone is in their connectivity to the city as an organization, but also what can we do better? How do we look to the future? And so it's pretty exciting. Great ideas emerging, and I look forward to having more conversations because that's 45 and we have about 115 FTE, so it's going to be a little while longer, but I'm looking forward to each and every conversation. So thank you.
Mr. Eckert, go ahead.
Yeah, I think to recognize the change, we need to change agenda item A to city administrator and department head comments. Officially recognize the new role.
I have no problem with that. Did you hear that, Rhiannon? Okay, good. Done. Okay. Who's next?
City government can make fast decisions sometimes.
Good evening, Mayor, council members of the public. I have an update and a request from council. So the update is around our draft environmental impact statement that was released on January the 17th. We have a 30-day comment period that ends on Tuesday, February the 18th. We received 2 comments. We're asking for those that are interested to also submit their comments. This analyzes the 4 growth alternatives that were provided to the council over a year ago. If you're looking for information, you can find it on our Planning and Economic Development website. You can reach out to me directly. That will lead out to a preferred alternative selection. That will be a joint meeting between the Planning Commission and the City Council. We are looking at a date in March, the first Planning Commission meeting in March, which I believe is the 12th of March on Tuesday. And we will be inviting the council to attend that meeting so you can choose your preferred alternative so we can move towards our final EIS. The request I have from council is we've had a lot of comments from the public around mobile home parks and the concern about the redevelopment of those parks and a request specifically for a moratorium and an overlay. And I want to provide council some information so they can make a policy decision if they desire to proceed with that. So I'd like to ask council if you'd be open with a memo coming onto the agenda for next week. We have time on the council agenda at this time so we can have a discussion about the policies that are in place right now, what regulations. I'm seeing a bunch of thumbs up. So great. All right, I'll move forward with that and we'll have a discussion next
I want to
week.
make sure though, if we do that, that we give kind of the full spectrum of alternatives. In other words, everything from the zoning involved that could be changed to out and out purchase by the residents. I think there's I don't want to leave an option out.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess in that standpoint, and could be a 3-hour workshop, so just in trying to put bounds to it. I'm sure there'll be a lot of spin-off discussions, but we've been fairly static with mobile home communities for the last 25 years. So what is the follow-on discussion between the city and the county on, that as a tool set? How do we encourage development of those going forward? We're talking about saving the ones we have today, but what can we do? Not to say we're going to have any answers next week, Heather, on that, but just in the.
Actually, probably not much to encourage more, but go ahead. Okay. And anything else, Heather?
That's all. Thank
Okay.
you.
Deb?
going down the line. This is great. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council, citizens. So just a reminder, March 1st is our family formal. It was previously known as the Daddy-Daughter Dance. It's more inclusive and it's over at the Sons of Norway. Big thank you to them and everyone who's sponsoring. So if you haven't signed up, you want to go dancing with someone in your family, ideally someone younger who might be tiny, you should bring them. Let's see here. Next is, I do have some negative news to share. It was unfortunate, but the Viking statue was decorated during Christmas by Crossroads Rotary with a whole bunch of wonderful lights, great holiday celebration. When they took those lights down, they noticed a number were missing and they're thinking it was stolen, unfortunately. Better than intentionally being cut. But they brought it to our attention. I'm just making sure council's aware. It does cost money for them to replace it, over 400. Just letting you know about that area. On a positive news, we are starting the Parks Pollinator Program. P3 is kicking off. This is planting perennials and native species and non-natives and flowering shrubs and trees. So we're working for council's awareness. We are going to have our first kickoff meeting at the end of this month, and we're pulling in about 10 to 12 community organizations, agencies, and businesses who are here and want to help beautify Poulsbo and bring pollinator corridors into our town. So if you have a suggestion of someone who would be passionate about that, please come talk to me and we'll get them connected. The other area that's fairly exciting is our senior programs are growing. Ran into the president of the North Kitsap Senior Citizen Center yesterday, and we are working on entering that MOU. We just haven't connected because of the holidays and a number of other things. So it's on our radar. And then the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. For your awareness, you might have seen the email. Councilmember Ed Stern has recently stepped down as chair after 20 years of being involved and chairing it. He has done a phenomenal job on this. Next week at council, we are going to be putting it on the business agenda for discussion to see which council member would be interested in volunteering to be the new chair for that.
Any volunteers? Please think about it, guys.
So, and if you have questions, please approach staff. I know Deb, myself, and others are here to help support, answer questions, so you know what the obligation is and the duties, as well as Councilmember Stern. And I do want to thank Councilmember Stern on behalf for his years of service on this. It has been, we're in really terrific shape, and I know we have a Lodging Tax Advisory Committee member in the audience tonight, and we're looking pretty darn good right now on that. So thank you, Councilmember Stern. Really appreciate your service. The last one is another thank you. And I know it's a little long, but we had some parking concerns over at the rec center. We've been working with our neighbors for years now and providing them awareness. Public Works came out, put up new signs. I really want to give a shout out not only to them, our city administrator, but especially our police department. Our goal was to not impound and tow as much as we can because it's expensive. And so we notified, we put warnings on folks' cars, but also they came and they made some phone calls so folks would not show up after not visiting their vehicle for days. And for the first time in who knows how many years, the upper lot is available. And last night it was completely filled with families and seniors for our programs, and they had adequate parking. So I want to thank our team for doing that. Thank you.
I just have a couple of quick things tonight. I want to give a shout out to the public works staff that worked around the clock in the winter weather that we had last week. One of the things I'd like to let council know is that because we didn't have a council meeting last week, we moved ahead briskly with a contract with Parametrics for $30,000 within operations to do some important work on the Linvig pump station. We were having electrical issues with the VFD, which is the variable frequency drive for one of our pumps, and we want to have a transfer switch added for safety precautions and operations needs at that site. The second thing, shout out to Charlie and Rachel, who applied for an RCO grant and were successful in getting that for about $250,000 for the design of the 8th Avenue culvert. And they spearheaded that and submitted the application and were successful. And we'll just add that to the 8th Avenue alignment project that we're working on. It helps us move all of that forward. And then finally, continuing the theme of contractors hungry for work and bidders getting out and bidding, At 11 o'clock today, April and Josh opened bids on the Knoll North project. They had 10 bidders. And we were expecting a number over $10 million. And I'll let Josh share it with you next week after he validates and gets reference checks. But it's going to be much lower than that. So that's good news for the city of Poulsbo. Thank you.
That's very good news. Chief, anything? Sure?
Glad to be back.
Okay. Amy, I see you back there. Judge? Anything? Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. So now we're moving on to questions and concerns of the city council. Any questions or concerns? Go ahead.
Mayor, I just, to let you and my colleagues know, I am interested in chairing the LTAC committee. I want to thank, Councilmember Stern for how many years? 20 plus years chairing the LTAC committee. I certainly understand the importance of tourism and visitors to our city and the role that the LTAC committee plays in priming the pump, so to speak, for those kinds of things. So I just need to, I'd like to talk with Ed a little bit and Jeff, just to make sure that if I were to do this, that I can work it out with my travel schedule, et cetera. So, but I am quite interested in doing that.
Thank you. Mr. Eckert.
Yeah, I just wanted to share, so as you all know, we had the email, we're gonna have our meeting next week, which we originally was canceled. So Ed and I have both, we have canceled our attendance at city action days to be here next week, which does mean that all our meetings with our legislators were canceled. So I just want to encourage everybody, it is important that we interact with them at whatever opportunities that we have, because there are a lot of, well, there are literally hundreds of bills, but there are an awful lot that are impacting cities that are being considered. And so they need to hear from us. They want to hear from us, good, bad, or neutral, support, oppose, or neutral. But our input is needed. So when you have opportunities, whether it's through the tool on their page or in person or, through email, whatever, just take opportunities to interact with them, because we're going to miss the formalized opportunity.
I'll just add a footnote to Councilman Eckert's remarks. I had the opportunity to be in Olympia a week and a half ago. So I did meet with Representative Simmons, Nance, Senator Hansen, and others, and did coordinate with Brian, did mention some of our projects too. So it's not like we've just let the thread unwind.
Okay. Go ahead. Council comments. Any other? Go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick, on behalf of the HDPA, I want to thank again, Public Works for coming through and getting those lights down from over the road, and they did a great job. And there were 2 boom trucks.
It works? I didn't think it worked.
I know, but it was amazing. It was such a feat. 2 boom trucks out. Anyway, it went really well, I think, and everything's down until next year. So thanks.
Okay. Any other questions and concerns of the council? Okay, seeing none, we are on to item C, which is the 2025 agreement with the Suquamish Tribe to provide services at the Recovery Resource Center. And Kim Hendrickson is, do I dare share it? She's with her anniversary with her husband. Okay, it's a special anniversary, so she's gone, and I said, heck yes. And so Rob's pitch hitting.
I'm pinch hitting, and so I am not Kim, just in case there was any confusion. I know I haven't been around very long, but want to make sure that's clear. But thank you very much. The first item on the workshop today is the 2025 agreements with the Suquamish Tribe to provide services at our Recovery Resource Center. In basic, this is not only agreement to provide those services, but it also includes a sublease with the Suquamish Tribe to provide those services. So they will be providing behavioral health professionals at the center. That would include substance use disorder professionals, peers, and possibly mental health professionals as well. The tribe will be providing services to center members, which is both tribal and non-tribal individuals. They would be contributing $600 a month in rent for their space at the facility. It does backdate the lease agreement to the middle of last month, January 15th of 2025. And it is really our start to hopefully for a very robust partnership with the tribe to provide those recovery services in North Kitsap. And still, just as a side note, the tribe does continue to intend to open up an opioid treatment program facility, or an OTP, in our area, but no site has been selected yet that we are aware of. So really looking at that comprehensive provision of services.
Okay, so Mr. McVeigh.
Thank you, Rob. I think this is wonderful. I'm glad that we're formalizing this partnership with the Suquamish tribe. I think there are a lot of common areas of agreement and need in our community. I know it's just a half-time position. Do we have any sense of how many clients they may be seeing at the Resource Recovery Center? Or is it kind of
I can't
open
answer
right
that.
now?
I think it's too early to really be able to project
Okay.
that, but I can always follow up with Kim and see if she has any better intel than I.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Eckert, go ahead.
Yeah, Rob, you mentioned the OTP. Do we know if they're intending to use any of the funding from that, the grant that they were looking at that to fund this, or is this a completely independent project?
I do not have an answer for that, but we can follow up. It was, I don't think, really part of our conversations in the negotiation of the lease as to their source of funding for this.
No, I'm just wondering, because I know they had a deadline on the funding on that funding, and so if this is one of the ways they're utilizing the funding, it's good, because we don't want them to lose that funding, but it's just curiosity more than anything, I guess.
Oh, we can follow up and provide council with that feedback as well.
One of the things that happened this week is that Kim has a task force that she puts together. I don't remember the name of it, but I guess it's a steering committee of all of the kind of her partners that are in that resource center. And the tribe was very present during this meeting, and they are actively engaged with the center right now, which is it's a really good thing to see. So this is kind of formalizing what was really starting to occur. Yes, they are doing OTP treatment, but not at I think it's scaled down from what was originally maybe suggested. But it's good to see the interaction. Very interesting morning with the steering. So.
Great.
Any questions, Mr. McVeigh?
Mayor, I might suggest, I'd like to move this forward, but given getting a couple of answers to some of our questions, I'm wondering if it'd be appropriate to put this on business agenda rather than consent agenda, so we can at least get those questions answered before we officially approve it. That sounds appropriate.
That sounds great. Everybody else concur? Okay, sounds good. And the next one then, if there's no question on this, we're going to go on to item D, which is agreement with and budget amendment 25 additional WASPIC funding for Recovery Center, Resource Center operations.
And thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, I am not Kim, but this is really one of those great news stories for us, because it really symbolizes the recognition on the statewide level of the work that's happening in the Resource and Recovery Center. And so when WASPIC found themselves with some additional funding, they thought of our center and being able to invest an additional $8,000 that will help to offset some staffing time. And so it basically is focusing on staffing and support services. It did have an associated agreement which has been signed, but this is would be a budget amendment coming forward to be able to recognize those new revenues and the expenditure thereof.
So the good work
Great
continues.
news.
Yes, and if you can get a grant from WASPIC, it's more than the money, really. It's a real acknowledgement from a statewide agency what a great job is being done. So it's very cool.
So we would put this on consent agenda for the next meeting?
You want consent or business?
Consent's fine.
Consent? Okay.
We're just accepting money.
And just for the members of the public that are here and or watching, I should avoid acronyms when possible. So WASPIC is the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs. So
When the
clarify that.
sheriffs and police chiefs like what you're doing, that's always a good thing. Isn't that true, Ron? Yes. Okay. All right. Any other questions for Rob? Thank you. Okay, so now we're on to the downtown parking implementation update, and this is Heather and Josh.
Good evening again, council and members of the public. Tonight's presentation is intended to give you all an update on actions taken since we last met in November of last year with our consultant Walker, and also to seek some input from this council about timing of improvements. You'll notice in tonight's packet, we included for you a memo outlining the steps taken, which I'll go over with you tonight, as well as minutes from a historic downtown Poulsbo Association meeting that was held in January with Josh and I. We also had council member Britt Livedall and Mayor, as well as Diane Linnaeus present. So there are minutes from that meeting included in your packet, as well as comments that were submitted. I think many of those comments were voiced this evening from a member of the public with some input about enforcement. And I'll go over how did we get to where we are tonight. For those that haven't been following the discussion, I'm going to share my screen though first. For those that haven't been following the discussion, and this was really helpful to share with members of the HGPA, this didn't come out overnight. This has been going on actually 2 years ago today, or around today's date. The first meeting was held with what was newly formed Downtown Parking Committee in February of 2023. This committee reviewed many of the reports and assessments that were done dating back to 2006. So this effort, some could say, has been almost 20 years in the making. Shortly after this committee formed, there was a contract with Walker Consultants and a community survey was launched. That survey was used as well as some data collection to put together the first report from Walker, which was presented in September of 2023 about existing conditions that outlined the usage of some of our parking spaces, which I'll actually provide a little bit more information on in a moment. And then Walker provided an implementation and action plan. Shortly after the release of that plan, the HGPA came to our council and shared with them a report that they had done and a study that they had done in the previous year. And that study was then presented to the committee. And then once the committee received that report, and as well as the recommendations from Walker, they formulated a recommendation to council about how to move forward with parking implementation changes. And council approved that recommendation. And then we started another contract with Walker to bring forth implementation, which I will be discussing with you all in the next few slides. In addition, an internal parking committee has formed of staff members, includes people from our Fanites team, as well as police and court. So we're all moving forward on the same page. And we've had one update from Walker with more to come in the future. And that leads us to outreach. As we know, it's important because things are moving forward and there's many moving parts that we have an informed public about what's occurring. We have launched a web page that was live in December. If anyone wants to find it, I tell everyone to just Google downtown parking implementation in Poulsbo. You'll get right there. It is a new page. It does link you to all the previous studies that were done and efforts from the committee. But what's notable about this page is it outlines what Walker presented to you all in your November meeting, which I'll go over in a moment. Josh and I have been working to do the outreach with those that are probably going to be most impacted by the changes. As we noted, we've met with HGPA, our chamber. Thank you, Kathy. They put an article in the chamber about some of the potentials for where paid parking will be implemented, cost, etc. And we've also reached out to Sons of Norway. As you may know, they have a new president, and we're just looking to get on their schedule. The presentation to HGPA just outlined what Walker presented to us in November, which was around these kind of questions, which is where is paid parking to occur? When might it happen? At this time, we were moving towards summer of 2025. Days of the week, we mentioned that it was between 6 or 7 days. The paid parking system is the hybrid system with the front row seats being designated, and then some considerations from council around 3rd and Moe Street. We spoke to the hours being considered of 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., the cost of 2 an hour with employees parking at King Olaf lot, and the cost of employees at 20. We made it very clear to the HDPA that these were all the recommendations from Walker, that this model that they provided in November showed that we could cover the cost of all this model of parking, including enforcement and the paid parking system, and there would be some revenue. And we did ask HDPA for some feedback on how we could spend that money based on a request from council to do such. And then, of course, there was question around enforcement and what that may look like. I did think it's notable to remind council of the total number of spaces that we have. And when we talk about paid parking, just how many of those spaces are we talking would be used for paid parking? This was something we highlighted with the HCPA. And it's just a good reminder that we have a total of 1,289 on and off street parking spaces in our downtown area. The city-owned percentage is 32% of its 413 spaces. Privately owned is a larger percentage at 53%. And then the on-street spaces are at 198. The Walker study found that the occupancy percentage is 98% on the weekends. I was looking today, I believe it was a 2012 study. The number hasn't changed a lot. There's high occupancy on our weekends, and it's been that way consistently over the years. The number of spaces proposed for paid parking are 274, or 44% of the total of the city-owned spaces. I just think that's a good reminder of how many spaces would be used for hourly parking and versus paid parking. We did get quite, yes.
That's current number that wouldn't take into account potential changes for Third Avenue.
That's
with
correct. This is current number
current stuff,
only.
yeah.
That's exactly right.
So less than half of the current city-owned spaces would be paid. 60% would still be free. Is that right,
Yes.
Heather?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
That's right.
And when you think about the percentage of the total amount of spaces, it's what is about 18, 20%, something like that?
Mhm. So the meeting we held with HGPA, that was our second meeting with HGPA. We met with them in December, and knowing that this is an important item for their membership, they offered, and we requested, and they offered to hold a meeting with their full membership in January. It was well attended. There were about 25, 30 people here. We heard a lot of comments and questions. And this is just, like I said, the full list of everything heard is in your packet. But this is some of the concerns that we heard. And we heard some of those echoed this evening. There was a definite concern that the local clients would not continue to come downtown and frequent their businesses. Some people had actual percentage of their total clients that they voiced this concern to them. There was also concern that we are not currently enforcing our hourly limits, and could we start with enforcement of hourly first before we move forward with the paid parking system. There was recognition that the employee parking of 42 spaces is not enough for all of the employees that we have downtown. And there was also concern if they're in a designated repeated spot that there could be safety concerns, that this could be a targeted area.
Say that again.
That it could be a targeted area, that people could know that these cars are for employees, they park here for long durations of
Okay,
time.
I got it.
And there was concern around that. In addition to enforcement, there was a question about what was happened to all those private spaces. Now that there's paid parking, those spaces are going to be in higher demand. And what is the city going to do to help enforce the potential use of those private spaces by people not willing to pay or adhere to the hourly time limits? And then there was a general sentiment for maybe a different kind of enforcement than we're currently looking at, which is potentially the license plate recognition model, where we would use a vehicle. There was a general desire expressed of having an actual person walking around and performing enforcement, that it was more Poulsbo-like. And then I would also say there was just a general concern about how quickly we're moving and how we received input from the people. Some people had claimed that they hadn't heard about these efforts until that evening. And so there's some concern about our outreach efforts. I will say that the new president of the HTPA um, has shown us that they're wanting to work with the city and they are wanting to help maintain the open lines of communication with their membership and help just to inform them of what's going on. So I think there's a good opportunity for us to have open communication and continual communication with the HTPA. I'm going to pause here before I move on. I'm going to move to shared parking and then where we are with enforcement, signage, and code updates. Are there any questions? Did anyone else want to share comments that were at that meeting? Or I can move on.
Keep going.
Okay, I'm going to keep going. Okay, so shared parking is something that was on the list of council approved actions of parking improvements. And I wanted to just give an update on where we are. We have received a draft parking agreement from Walker of considerations that we should pursue when seeking shared parking. We have met with the First Lutheran Church pastor and made some, I think, some notable progress. Pastor Kent has expressed that he wants to be a part of the parking solution. He has spoken to his membership that is appointed making these type of decisions, and there's some general support. So we have actually drafted an agreement that's gone through our legal team to move forward. And just for everyone's clarity, the spaces we're talking about are not actually on the church site. It would be across the street on 4th. There's about 16 spaces there that we would be using potentially for employee parking only would be the idea.
With the employee parking, so I saw a lot of the comments that were either emailed to us or in that 42 is not enough, but have we gotten any kind of indication of what number would be considered enough? Like what is an average employee number on an average day, on an average weekend for the downtown area?
I can say the only concrete number we had was from an earlier study that was done, and it was around 90. I want to say it was the 2012 study. So we don't have anything more concrete. I am hopeful that through Placer AI, they can actually suss out employee numbers through that data, which is the new platform that we purchased beginning of the year. So we don't have concrete numbers on that at this time.
Go ahead, Pam.
Oh, sorry. You can't
And
see.
the numbers that are gathered, there would be consideration for seasonal activity and as well as non-seasonal, just to make sure that those numbers are captured.
Correct. So they would fluctuate. And so the Placer AI data basically allows us to draw data from any period of time over a geographic boundary. And so we would definitely need to do different variations of time so we can capture those fluctuations.
Okay. Go ahead, Gary.
Thanks, Mayor. Heather, I just want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. Did you say the church is only interested in working with us on a lease agreement for 16 spaces, not for a larger portion of the lot?
At this time, we're not talking about the larger portion of the lot. And the reason is there's less limitations on those 16 spaces. Those 16 spaces are only utilized for overflow events like a funeral or a wedding. And there's an average of 12 of those a year. Of course, that fluctuates every year, but there's more of a guarantee with those spaces than there would be with the other spaces in the lot. Pastor Kent did say he wasn't opposed to that, but I thought it'd be better to start with the place that we have certainty before we expand too
Okay,
far.
thanks for the clarification.
The location's good too, because it's right at the top of the Moe Street Trail. Very easy. It's an easy place to walk to. Yeah.
So I'd say that's the most notable progress we have. We have started conversations with Bank of America. We may have a potential lead at what was former Poulsbo Place Division 8, the vacant lot that's been recently purchased on Jensen. There's a potential opportunity there, but nothing solid to report. And as I mentioned, we do have a draft agreement. Once it's completed its review with staff internally, we're going to share that with Pastor Ken. It could be as early as next week.
Speaking of Division 8, there's one additional wrinkle. We received an email from the postmaster at Poulsbo Post Office. And Division 8 is now headed towards construction. And that is where the land where all the postal employees parked. And so she was asking if we had any ideas about where postal employees could park. So and she said it was about 30 cars, if I'm not mistaken. So I said, I really don't. What we really need is a new post office up at Ojeva. And that conversation started, but that's a very long conversation with a long timeline. It could very well be we are going to get 30 more cars on our streets because the employee parking for the post office is going to disappear. So I just wanted to let you know that.
It's an ever shifting situation with our parking in downtown. And this is my last slide of our updates, and then I'm going to transition into timing. As you can see from this, we have received a draft RFP for enforcement services. So all to say, Josh and I are at a place where we could potentially go out and launch this as early as this month. Then we would move through the process of selecting a consultant and bringing a contract with a budget amendment to city council so that we could hire someone to pursue enforcement for the city. We have received some draft signs, and we did talk to council at the last meeting in January about bringing that to the parking committee. You all said that was a good idea. We will be initiating that process with them to improve our signage. And then we have received any change we do to our parking does require a municipal code change, and we have received a draft code from Walker. I'll just say Walker's been working rapidly. They're more than halfway done with their contract, and we have enough deliverables that Josh and I can move forward with implementation this summer, potentially. We've never done this before. We don't know what we don't know, but we have all we need to continue to move forward with what council has asked us to move forward, which is improve signage, enforcement, and securing employee parking, and implementing paid parking in our front row seats. What I would like for council to consider tonight, and we don't have to make a decision this evening, but I'd like to have a discussion around is timing. So we've been moving towards summer of 2025. That may seem too fast for council or this community. So just food for thought, we have 3 alternatives included in your packet, which I'll outline for you now. First is to stay on the track that we've been moving towards, which is full implementation of all changes. One of the benefits of this is that will require the least amount of modification to human behavior and to physical improvement. So if we move forward with signage improvement, for example, and we change direction in a year and implement paid parking, then we'll have to change all of our signs. It's just a reality, but something to note. And of course, behavior change. If people are used to parking in a place that is now enforced for hourly and now becomes paid parking, it's just going to take an adjustment period. So option 1 is doing all in summer of 2025. Option 2 is a phased approach where we begin with signage, designated employee parking, and enforcement, and paid parking launching all in 2026. We would continue to work with council and this year to firm up all of the things we've been discussing, which are days of the week, the cost, if you want to consider Moe in third, we'll continue to move towards that. But we would be launching everything basically a year out. And then the third option, and I apologize, the second one is not the hybrid. The second option is moving it all to 2026. The third option is the hybrid one, excuse me. So that's where we just do signage, employee parking, and enforcement in 2025, and then we would implement paid parking in December of 2026. And so with that, I'm going to pause and see if there's any questions from council.
And Doug, and then Rick. Doug, Rick.
It's an interesting thing that we've been talking about for 20 plus years. If this was easy, it would have been, something would have changed some point in that standpoint. So Heather, Josh, appreciate all the efforts to try to get us pulled together in this standpoint. I guess I would want to start at the higher level of, what are the outcomes we're trying to achieve, Gary? Being an outcome guy. In my mind, it's to enable more visitors to downtown
and to improve the user experience when they come into downtown. A lot of what we're talking about is we've got a closed system of 413 parking spots, could change a little bit. There's a potential to get some partnerships. We get it up to 500, 550. But as we've discussed before, adding new parking in the short term is probably not feasible at this standpoint. So we go into, if we do paid parking, that's going to change behavior, using your words. Typically increasing costs reduces demand. We've seen it, you shared the thing from Bell. And so that may mean less people come downtown, or they would choose a different way to come downtown. That's the problem that we are missing here, is that we don't have alternative transportation forms to come downtown. So getting into off my soapbox a little bit into, today was a sunny day. Anderson Parkway at 2 o'clock in the afternoon was about 75, 80% full. King Olaf had 3 empty spots. If you went back into that area behind Martha and Mary, there was maybe 10 more, but King Olaf was almost all parked out, the primary thing. Jensen had 1 empty spot. So if we had paid parking implemented today, would we expect to see more visitors today or less? I'm going to answer my own question. My sense is, based on everything I'm hearing, is that less people would be coming downtown today, not more. Because today, like yesterday, I was downtown, and the day before. This time of year, these shoulder seasons or off season, parking is available. So I'm still struggling with how paid parking generates more visits. And sorry, one last thing in this standpoint. I know there's some permanent party people living. I think there's 15 people in boats in Anderson Parkway. I think there's 5 to 10 people over here. So there's maybe 25, let's say 30 of our 400 spots are people that live downtown that shouldn't be in a 3-hour standpoint. Enforcement gives them away. But I'm struggling with the math on how do we get back to the things that, I saw most of us acknowledge, hey, we want more visitors and we want the experience to be better. That's where I'm still stuck.
Doug, and then Rick.
Yeah, I had a similar thought process and did some digging and found basically it's the toss up of more turnover, so more people who are coming here with the purpose of shopping and stuff like that have spots, but the people who are coming here to park, to like employees or people who are coming here to park for longer term reasons, are then pushed out. And it's
and of the people that
friction of $2.
The people that do come, the Walker reports that they stay an hour and a half.
Yeah,
it's those long term, the employees, and I think the people that are living downtown, that is potential opportunities.
Yeah, just the Walker presentation had operating cost of $420K, and the alternative Monday through Saturday that was presented to us had a revenue of $900K. So one thing, talking about what are our goals, if it helps businesses, that our long-term goal, and it helps us, it also helps everybody, that our long-term goal is to build a parking garage eventually, right? Where would that go in King Olaf, or having an idea about what that would look like? What's the timeline for that? And then what would be a reasonable, cost to set to get to that? Or is that even needed? Is that feasible? Because if we're just implementing this plan, because there is population growth, right? 2021, we had 11,000, now 13,000. In 2040, we're going to have 17,000. So then, where are we going to park? And that's just within the city. So what, the rest of Kitsap is growing. Where those people are going to find parking?
Or where are they going to go?
Rick, and then Gary. And Rhiannon,
Yeah.
can you queue up those pictures I sent you too?
Yeah, before we got into, kind of the ins and outs, I really wanted to, could we start on enforcement? Because I think there's a couple layers to that. And if I understand everything correctly, and we've been talking about this a long time, if we stick with what we got now, enforcement falls basically all in the police department. And we know where the Manning stands there. if we go to a paid model, the paid model enforcement during the paid hours will be the contract. Enforcement outside of those hours would be the police department. And I'm doing this very simply, but that's basically what we're looking at. So I know there's been a lot of suggestion about, we'll just enforce. And so kind of that's where we look at it. If we just enforce what we have now, we're relying on existing resources to do that, which are already stretched. If we move to the paid parking, the hours of that enforcement is paid for by that mechanism, but it's an outside entity. It's not a person walking around writing tickets. And I'm fairly confident saying I don't think anybody wants a person walking around tickets whose job salary is dependent on how many tickets get written and cover that salary. I don't think that's a model we want, which is why we're looking at technology versus the arbitrariness of a person. And then the after hours, which is when we get into the folks parking that live down there that leave their cars overnight, that's when the police department comes into play and has to be looking at those kind of folks, people parking when they shouldn't. Because I've done that drive-through. I've done the downtown drive-through on my way to work in the morning at 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock in the morning on a weekday when there is not a business open anywhere downtown. And I can count, I've done it on multiple days over multiple times. And there's 10 to 20 cars parked in Anderson. So the only thing you can assume from that is those are cars that were there all night. And so that's folks leaving their cars there that should not be. So I've stressed it before. I'm going to continue to stress, regardless of what we go to, enforcing has to be the number one plank of the plan. Whatever we decide has to be enforced. That includes parking under this building, downtown, whatever we do, because if we don't enforce it, we will not achieve any of the goals that we've set out for.
Gary, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councilmember Eckert that enforcement is going to be one of the keys here. I do want to just pull back a little bit. And, for decades now, anyone who was filed to run for city council or who was filed for run for mayor in this town has committed as part of their platform that they are going to solve the downtown parking crisis. Okay? Many of us included took that on. That's been pretty common for decades now. We've been at this, depending on how you count. I'm counting 2 years because I've been a member of the parking committee for 2 years, as other people have. But yes, you can go back 20 years in terms of studies, and we have made some tweaks, but we have not, I think, made significant progress that we would like. So I am in favor of doing something soon. I think, we've been at this a long time. We've spent considerable money on a consultant to help us. I think it was a good investment, but it's not free. And if we don't make some decisions to move something forward now, I think it's going to be at least 10 years before any city council and any mayor is going to be willing to pick this up again. I'm reflecting back at one of our parking committee meetings. Mike Brown, one of the partners in Sound West Group that owns a significant share of downtown properties, talked about, we have really two options for enforcement. One option is writing tickets like Barney Fife used to do back in Mayberry times. The other option is to charge a nominal fee for parking. And if that person finds that they need more than 2 hours or 3 hours to finish their meal or do their shopping for downtown, all they have to do is pull out a phone, add an hour of parking, and they avoid getting a ticket. And he talked quite a bit about which would you rather have? What is a better customer experience? Giving the customer the power to choose how long they park and being able to extend how long they're here, or writing them a ticket and causing some real angst. And the reason that we're not doing enforcing now, and the mayor can talk about this further if she would like, is when we were enforcing parking, we were pissing off an awful lot of people. A lot of people came and complained to the mayor, business owners and other included. What are you doing? You're scaring away my customers. We had volunteers doing the monitoring. Some of those volunteers were getting a lot of verbal abuse from people over a period of time. So I'm not convinced that writing tickets is the way to go. I think there's a lot of new technology out there that we can tap into. And I'm intrigued by the possibility of giving people the power to stay as long as they want. And if they want to add an hour or two, they can do that. So I think we need to focus on the enforcement and what's going to be the best way to do that. Finally, the reason that I'm intrigued by at least less than half of our spaces going to a paid parking model, $2 an hour, fairly nominal fee, is it brings in revenue that we can invest in parking for the future. I think it is this council's responsibility to be looking 5, 10, 20, 30 years into the future. If we don't do that, who is? And so from my perspective, if we can capture some additional revenue that we can invest in whatever it is, parking structures, leasing parking from First Lutheran Church or Bank of America, starting a shuttle service, perhaps from outside downtown into downtown during the peak summer months. I think there's a lot of options that we can look at, to Doug's point of increasing the traffic, increasing the number of visitors to downtown Poulsbo. I'm still intrigued by that. And so far, nobody else has been able to tell me how else we're going to pay for adding parking capacity in the future.
I took this picture yesterday, I think it was. And that's Papakashina right there. It's right at the corner. The phone booth is right to the left. And it said, would appreciate not being towed. We'll have this gone by Wednesday. That truck sat there for 3 days. Can you go to the next picture, Rhiannon? I can't remember. Let's see. This is Anderson Parkway at 8:30 Monday morning. Okay. There's nothing open. So who are those people? And you can see some of them have snow on the roofs. That means they were there all night. Next picture. This was Monday morning too. This is from the Sophie. Those cars were there all night because they've got snow on them. And so, I mean, that's what we're dealing with. We have cars that are they're permanently using our parking. And right now, I went to the Poulsbo, the chamber lunch today, had a great lunch, and then came back and there's no parking in the parking garage. And I'm parked down on Jensen right now because I couldn't find a parking place in our parking garage. And so it is a problem. I agree with Gary. We have to do something. We cannot let this go on. The resolution was, I wrote this, was my attempt at trying to move the council forward in some direction. And what this is what I call the phased approach, which is, it tells the history like any resolution does. It's saying that we started the first study in 2006. I read this to my husband. He said, 2006, we've been fighting about parking in downtown since I was in high school, is what he said. So he said, and it tells the history of what we've done. And then it tells the recommendations from the Walker consultants by bullet point. And then it tells what we need to do and what we should do. And then there's a timeline. There's a series of steps. And the first step is we'll increase signage to make sure that everybody knows where and what they can park in. And then we will go into an enforcement phase where we will start to enforce, followed by paid parking in the summer of 2026, next year. That'll give us time to do the steps that we need to do in order to make this work. You guys can mark this up or deal with this resolution how you choose. This is just a draft that I put together, but we need to make a decision. You guys need to make a decision. We're either going to do something or please, I don't want to talk about it anymore. I've talked about parking for 15 years. Mr. Eckert and then Mr. Newell.
So you had 3 options. Do you think that you could do it by 2025? I know you kind of laughed about doing that, but as a not having done before, but
I like to say, I don't know what I don't know. right? And I've never done this before. Kenzie gave us some confidence that we could around 2025. We would need to hit the ground running. We've got a lot to do quickly. Anything you want to add to that, Josh?
Okay. All right. So I started with what I thought was the most important without my opinion. Now I'll give my opinion. Um, I agree with Gary. I think we have, as a city, have studied this problem to death. And the only way to move forward is to move forward. We got to take steps. We're not going to add parking. We're not going to improve the future without a revenue stream to do it. We're not trying to, we don't want to implement parking to raise money. It's not a revenue grab for the city. It's to invest in the city. And I don't think we're going to change the behavior of folks in positive ways without significant changes. What I have often seen in my own experiences downtown, it's not that parking's not available, it's that folks feel like parking's not available and they start to act in ways like it's not available. They start to get frantic and they drive because they're worried. I got to get to the spot fast because it might not be available. People's behavior is driven by a fear of not having parking. It's not by there not being spots. Because I have often just taken one more loop or to go into a side road, come up to City Hall and not had a problem finding a spot. It's that patience that's missing because of this perception that is just not there. And I think until we start to address some of that by changing what we're doing, it's going to continue because it's perception's reality. And so I don't think we want Barney Fife model. I think that that's going to cause more problems than it's going to solve. Because again, if the person who's writing the tickets, employment is reliant on how much money they raise through tickets, it's going to create a perception that they're just writing tickets to raise money. And that's not what we're after. And so I think the technology solution is the best bet. I've used it in Bremerton. I've used it at the Sea Discovery Center. It's there. We do have alternative ways to come downtown. We have a bus that runs through downtown all day. No one uses it. So it's not that there aren't solutions. And again, like Gary pointed out, we don't own half the parking down there, and we're not looking at making even half of what we own paid. There are things there people just don't use. We will not encourage that to change until we do something. And so I think we should go with the first solution, implement it this summer, because we can always step back. It's a lot harder to take a half measure and then go the rest of the way than it is to go the full measure and take a half step back. That's a lot harder for people to accept. So that's my opinion.
You're thinking, you're rethinking. Go, Britt. Go ahead.
As far as timing, because that's really your question right now. I agree with my colleagues. This is just hard. All of this is hard. And I think we all have, feelings about it. It's scary to do this, but I think we just need to do it. And I'm concerned about if we push off the hybrid paid parking model until next summer, that the adjustment period is going to coincide with potentially a huge influx of tourism from the FIFA World Cup. It's being held all over, but here is in Seattle as well. So that's going to bring even more people than we already see coming, every summer, but every year it feels like the quote tourist season is extended. There's not really just a season anymore. Just any weekend through any point in the year can be crazy busy and the parking lot can be full. And I think the growing pains of trying to do that next year could be even worse. So just want to see it, Mr. Tabor, happen.
So I was just doing some rough math based on the revenue and cost stuff, and then looking at good old Google says about, to build a parking structure, it's about 30K per spot, which is for a 100K spot, it would be, for above multi-level, would be about $3 million. The current model they had listed for just Monday, through Saturday, so no Sunday parking, was about 400 per year, over cost. And then that would be 7.5 years to be to the point where we could build a 100-car parking garage on, King Olaf.
That's right.
So just, and then that also gives us room to adjust to, our model of what days, what times, employee parking. Like, we're not being squeezed right now, and we have room. I know that that's kind of the big next steps is what do we do in terms of the details of parking, but at least from the numbers we have and the where we're standing in from the consultant's perspective, it seems like we have a good solution to map out a goal long term and provide more parking, more free parking even, by just utilizing the downtown high demand parking for $2 an hour paid. So I'm also for implementing one of those three. I need to reread them to be certain.
Doug was next, but do you want to go ahead, get him?
It's just a quick question. I don't know if you guys have the answer, but do we know what the port charges by any chance for that parking lot?
It's no more than 3 an hour. I did look at it at once. It's no more than 3.
Okay, yeah, my point is just that I think they're the only paid thing downtown other than the little spots at Sea Discovery. So those suddenly become inventory that others may consider parking in if it's.
That's a good point, Britt. That's a totally underused parking lot right now.
Yep.
And I will note that the Salt, a small business downtown, they have started charging
Charging
for
parking,
some
yeah.
of their spots. They've put up signs with QR codes within the last, 3 to 6 months. And so there are a number of folks charging already for downtown parking in Poulsbo. I just want to say one more thing. I think I know, change is hard. I know some people are fearful to take a step. Again, it's 40% of the spaces that would be paid, 60% would still be unpaid. I know there's some fear about that, but I think in some cases people undervalue our downtown experience. Our downtown, visiting our downtown, shopping, enjoying a cup of coffee, getting your hair cut, having a beer, whatever you're doing. It's not the same as going to the Kitsap Mall. It's not the same as going to the Trail Shopping Center. So I'm not convinced that people were saying, I'm not going to spend $2 an hour to come downtown. I would question that. They may at first just by personal protest, but I think the experience that is provided by our downtown merchants, our community, has value and more value than people are giving it credit for. I would also say if people are objecting at spending $2 or $4 to come downtown, how much money were they going to spend in your business anyway? If that's really the issue. And if they don't want to pay, they're still going to see some free spaces available. And if we can invest in additional parking capacity, that's going to help both the paid and unpaid model, the hybrid model.
Doug, are you ready yet?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Then you would.
Yeah, obviously there's, there's time when the decisions need to be made and you need to move forward. And you need to move forward smartly and you need to kick the rudder over and you go. You make bold statements and you move. Then there's times when you have to sit there and say, I don't have a good decision in front of me, and making a bad decision may not add value. The value, what we need here is more parking or more access to downtown. We're talking about something that's going to affect demand and decrease activity potentially downtown. The downside of this, and I'll just pull back in this, that yes, we are elected representatives to act as Mayor, you've shared with me, the legislature to represent the interests of the people.
That's right.
And I have not heard from anybody within the HDPA or any people that live here, residents, that says that we have built a compelling view of the future that they want us to invest in, to make changes to.
Go, okay, go ahead, finish, Doug.
And so in that standpoint, if I look at all of my emails and all the phone calls and all the public comments, I don't see it even, 20% saying, hey, let's lean forward and go do this, because we haven't built that compelling vision of the future of how this makes us better.
Go ahead, Brett.
What we have heard distinctly is that there are business owners who don't feel that they can be public in supporting something very different, a hybrid paid model. They feel that they will be, I mean, not just personally attacked, but that there will be boycotts of their businesses just for sharing their feelings publicly. That's what I've been told by business owners who are not necessarily anti-paid parking. They want a solution. I don't love paid parking. I think
Who loves paid
I don't know. I don't love it. This isn't like fill me with joy. We have to solve the problem in the long term. We have to add more inventory. We don't have cash lying around to do that. And I don't think it's up to the ratepayers of Poulsbo, the residents, to take on that burden. Like, I think that behavior has to change. And this is a way of changing behavior.
Mr. Tabor.
Well, just real quick, we have heard from business owners who have said, I have had customers say, I have turned away from downtown because I couldn't find this place to park. And so, either I gave up or I just didn't try. So I don't know how we capture that number, but that's been a years-long statement that's been made.
Mr. Tabor, go ahead.
This morning, I woke up on the fence on this issue, and the two things that I think pushed me over is, one, enforcement without allowing people to pay up front is negative, right?
Really
It's if you show up, go to a business and you're there for 62 minutes and you get a ticket, I'm going to be upset. It's going to make me, I'm like, I would have paid $2 to park here or $4 and not gotten a ticket. I think getting a ticket's worse than paying $4 up front. Just would make me angry, would make me not enjoy being downtown Poulsbo. Two, I really think after the first, there's enough room here that we can, I think, discuss, employee permit, whether or not it works or not. What works, we have room to figure out what works in a paid parking scenario, lots of room to wiggle. And then in that, once we have a revenue modeled, we can get a bond, and Josh, you can start building that parking garage like 2030 and get that thing done. And then 100 spaces of free parking, that we can, enforce no overnight parking, things like that we can discuss later. But I think this is the path to move forward, and staying the same won't work.
I mean, get a pass fair. No, go ahead. Mr. Stern.
Thank you, Mayor. So having been a member of the parking committee and remember the earlier studies and moving forward, I'm just going to make some brief remarks that should be a surprise to no one. I've said before, we're very fortunate to have this wonderful problem. There are many, many downtowns throughout this state and in the United States that wishes they had a parking problem because of the benefit of people wanting to be in their town. I've also said the major test needs to make sure that the cure is not worse than the illness. I'm not saying anything new here in light of that. So I've remarked before quietly, and I did meet with Heather and the consultant that I coordinated here in January, and I appreciate that. And Heather, at the right moment, might want to clarify the nature of that conversation. But the essence of what we're trying to do to affect the change of benefit is have the employees out of that parking lot. So number one, we need to make sure we have an adequate area, enough spaces for the employees that need to be moved. And I'm still not heard a good number from Walker, or how many employees are we dealing with that we need to move to an alternative site that works for them, but frees up the immediate close area for the visitor, which is what we're aiming for. Britt just mentioned something real interesting, which is we don't want to penalize the local citizen for the parking garage that's of benefit to the visitors, or something to that effect, that we want to be sensitive to honoring the locals. And that's the crux of what I am focused on. We don't talk about waterfront park. We're looking at this as an economic development model, the business impact, visitors, revenue, et cetera. But I want to remind my colleagues that there is our major park in the city that is the length of the entire C1 commercial zone is the waterfront park, which has been built by the city courtesy of the local citizen taxpayer. I'm concerned that to utilize that park during the day, we're going to require our local citizens to pay for access. And I think that's a dangerous precedent. Let me go over to what Rick and Gary and Britt have talked about, the technological solution rather than writing tickets on the enforcement. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think there is a technological compromise here that could work, at least in my mind. And I'm only one of 7 that will decide this issue. And that is that if we're going to a QR code technology model, and this is what Heather and Walker and I discussed at length, the ability to create, once you're registered, a credit for a very relatively limited amount of time. Is that 1 hour? Is that 45 minutes? I don't know. But that especially the local citizen have access to that park, or if they're running just a quick errand without having to pay for parking. The premise of this remark is our object is to move the employees who are parking as close to the business they're employed in as possible out of that immediate area. That frees up a tremendous amount of spaces. And again, that's predicated, have we identified enough employee spaces? So I myself, unless I hear something different, agree with it. I am for moving toward parking without punishing the local citizen who is there for a brief visit, whether that's a haircut or a donut or a book or some other short errand. And I think the technological solution affords that approach.
You know, Mr. Stern, you're punishing the local citizen every day because they're paying for all the parking. The citizens of Poulsbo pay for those parking lots. They pay to maintain them. They pay to take the garbage out. They pay everything to do with those parking lots. The citizens of the city of Poulsbo, for all the visitors that come here and all the business owners that might not necessarily live here. The citizens pay every day for those parking lots. And I think that's the part that somewhat bothers me about it, is it's just not fair. It's the fairness issue that really bothers me. Go ahead, Britt.
I do want to comment on, I think what you're getting at is a grace period. Having a grace period within our model, is that correct? I've read a lot of comments from, HDPA members and other members of the public on this issue. And I think something that I've come around to, because I know the consultants indicated that offering grace periods can complicate things.
Very complicated.
However, I do think that something modest, like 15 to 20 minutes of grace period, if that can be integrated into the technology in a way that's not totally complicated, I think that would be worthwhile.
What they do is they take your credit card and they store it. And then they say, okay, I'm not supposed to charge this for 15 minutes. And then they charge you. And then the person comes back and says, that was my 15 minutes. You can't charge me. That's the problem. It's technologically, it's very, very difficult to do it. Mr. Tabor and Mr. Eckert.
Just a quick note. So again, the revenue models allow room for this, allowing access and giving people maybe a 1 day a week. Oh, it's here. It's already Sundays, free parking on Sundays. I think that solves a lot of the pressure of like, I want to go downtown and not have to deal with it. I want to be able to get access to the park. So I think this, again, this model only loses $100K a year in revenue if you take off Sundays, which I don't know if that's wrong or right, but again, we have room to wiggle and try different solutions in the system. So I think that was one of them.
Mr. Eckert.
Yeah, as far as access to the park and some of those other things, just a reminder, we're talking about less than 50% of the city-owned parking spaces. So there are still spaces, and that's even just the immediate. There are spaces a little further away that will still be free and available that are not considered immediate downtown.
So folks do have options. And again, we have the bus, you have touted that bus route more than anyone, and that is almost empty all the time. As far as a grace period, if there was gonna be any grace offered in the system, I would be much more inclined to lean, rather than a 15-minute window or a 20-minute window or a 30-minute window, towards senior citizens, low economic class citizens, that they can get reimbursed for parking than I would a 15-minute window for everybody. I would be much more inclined to look to our senior population and having them be able to not pay or get reimbursed for paying than I would somebody that doesn't want to pay for their donut stop. That's my position on it.
We've been, Miss Crow, and then we've really got to, we need some direction here.
Well,
And-
yes, that's what I want to comment on is if we can just, can you put the three options back up? And if we can just go ahead and move towards what we feel is a good timeline. I do want to say that I feel that it would still be good to get input from the community business owners. Yeah, this is what you would like for us to decide.
So council, to be clear, this is just your initial approach. This is the first time we've introduced these three concepts for you all. So if you want to make a decision on this tonight, yes, but you do not have to. The idea is this will be our first discussion. We can return this on March the 5th on the as a business item, business agenda, and we can iron this out more. And a lot of the details, the really important details that you are considering tonight in terms of grace period, days of week, none of that needs to be decided for this resolution. All we are asking for with this resolution is timing. And then all those specific details, we will come to you once a month, twice a month, whatever it takes to iron out those details for implementation.
I'm sorry, you said a decision on March 5th, the March 5th?
On March 5th, we'll bring back the resolution for you all to move forward on if you would like, and we can continue to flesh out those details on March the 5th.
March 5th is my birthday. I will be on a cruise. Give me a gift and make some decisions moving forward. Okay?
Okay. I don't know who's that, and Mr. Stern, and then Mr. McVeigh, and then Mr. Eckert, and then we really do have to keep moving.
So I just want to turn to Heather. You were there for our conference call with Walker on the technological solution and the ability to create what my colleagues are now referring to as a grace period. Have you received any feedback or what you heard? Is this, if the council so desires, is this a viable approach technologically, according to Walker?
It could be done technologically. There's pros and cons to it that we would want to consider.
So I'll go ahead. So I want to say I want to recommend we move forward with one. And then that allows us to find out from staff if 2025 is too soon. So, and then that leads us to, if we need to push to 2026, but shoot for the early implementation. And then if we find out we can't do it, that leads us to the conversation for the other two.
Mr. McVeigh.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I agree with Mr. Eckert. I would support putting option one on the business agenda for March 5th. I think it's time to take an up or down vote on this. I think, Pam, I think we've made a Herculean effort here to get citizen comment to this project. We have citizen comment period at the beginning of every meeting, at the end of every meeting. The parking committee meetings for 2 years were open to the public. People have emailed us, they've called us, they've caught us on the street. I think we've really taken an awful lot of input from the community. I'm not sure how much more is going to change. The arguments for and against on this, frankly, have not changed a great deal in the last 2 years we've been talking about this. They've changed somewhat, but I would say not considerably. So I would be in favor of moving option one to the business agenda for the March 5th meeting to take an up or down vote.
Okay, so I'm hearing number one, March 5th, be there, be square, except for you, you're going to be gone. And we'll go from there.
Just for the record, as I noted it under council comments, I'm going to be representing the city with the Olympic College Task Force in Spokane. That's the 5th and the 6th that President Cavalucci has identified.
Okay.
Thank you,
that-
council.
You know what? I want to say thank you, council, for really a hard conversation and a tough decision. Whichever way it goes, I really appreciate the thoroughness that you're vetting this with. I can't be neutral on this because it's beaten me up for 15 years. I mean, I've been dealing with parking and but thank you for the consideration and we'll see what happens on March 5th. Okay. Anyway. The next thing is Knoll Road Improvement Projects North Segment Consultant Contract, Construction Administration Contract. Wow, that's a mouthful. This is Josh.
All right, good evening, council again. Okay, so as you heard earlier this evening during department head updates, we did open bids for the Knoll Road project today. And we were very excited and happy with the turnout we got for that bid opening and the results that we received. So now we're almost there to construction. Well, it's our second largest transportation project that the city has ever done, right behind Johnson Parkway. And so with that, you might remember on Johnson Parkway, we had an entire team of WashDOT staff that supported the construction of that project. And so this project, the next phase, is not significantly smaller than the Johnson Parkway project, meaning our staff here has a lot going on. And so we're looking for some staff augmentation. And so with that, we're proposing to bring on a consultant to support us through the construction management of the project.
Just because we're passing around cookies does not mean we're not listening to you, Josh.
Oh, no
Pretty
insult
sure.
taken.
Okay.
No insult taken. So just a recap of the project, really quick, it'll be construction of the new roadway segment connection from the Knoll Messford intersection up to Lincoln along the Languinette and Maranatha section with a compact roundabout at the Knoll Messford intersection, and then connection to close the gap of the shared use path from where the elementary school is down to where Johnson Parkway left off. So anticipated schedule, this is already a little outdated because we did open bids today. We're looking at likely construction starting in May of 2025. That'll be dependent on getting our contractor on board and getting their schedule reviewed and things like that. So and then we are expecting an anticipation construction schedule being complete in April timeframe of 2026. So about a year-long construction. And I did want to note, so while we're hiring a consultant to help us manage the construction, that's the documentation and inspection and things like that, we do need to hire a consultant to help us do materials testing. So they'll come out there and do testing on the rock and the asphalt and compaction and things like that. So we'll be bringing that back to you at a later date with a different consultant to support us on that need. So as I mentioned, it's really about staff augmentation. We really need a good sized team to manage this size project. So this staff augmentation will support us with documentation, submittal review, RFIs, change order, as well as inspection in the field. Our construction estimate was in the $11 to $12 million range. We received favorable bids today, so we're excited to bring that back to you next week. And the consultant contract for the construction administration total is just over $746,000. It is currently in our approved project budget, and so no budget amendment is required. And so with that, I'll open it up for any questions about the consultant needs and efforts. And if you're good, we would like to move it to the consent agenda next week. Go ahead, Rick.
Not really about this project at all, but it made me think of it. But in the process of the north section, designing, working and all, it might want to consider plans to site a second traffic camera like we have by the elementary school in the north segment, because what I fear will happen is we've basically created stops at 2/3. Yeah, Chief left. I was going to look at him. And I fear what happens is once they hit that stop sign heading north, now that north segment becomes a raceway for folks. So maybe we consider if we can at least make the allowance for it as we do the sidewalks and power and everything. That if we need to put a second camera up that way, we don't run into power issues and such like we found on the one.
Unfortunately, we're limited by the
Yeah.
amount of cameras we can have in the jurisdiction, correct?
Well, that and the school zone is.
Well,
is
there's a
not-
park up there, so I was thinking that,
Oh,
but I thought the RCW expanded the year after we approved the first three. I thought it expanded, but we do have a park up there, so.
Yeah, we can follow up on that, but I will
Yeah.
say that we have worked through the design process to put in traffic calming measures with this project to alleviate that concern as well, so.
Yeah, I know a lot of folks up when you get to the T intersection are seeing a lot of traffic misbehavioral now. And so I wouldn't want to create a new section for that to happen in.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of traffic misbehavior, period, on Mill Road. Go ahead. Here.
Josh, just so I'm clear.
Sure.
We did not go out for a bid on this consultant contract. Is that correct?
That's correct. The consultant selection is purely qualifications based.
Okay, all right. And in that situation, how do we know we're getting a fair contract? Just past experience, we've already vetted them, and that's why they're on our approved vendor list?
All of the above, yes. And so part of this, when we consult or contract the construction management services, it is a little bit easier in the sense that basically we told our consultant that we feel that we need 2 full-time staff dedicated to this project in order to augment our team. And so that we know that our construction contract is 200 working days. And so we know that there's a little bit of time that they need to put on the project before the project starts and a little bit of time at the end of the project. So based on that, we're easily able to estimate the hours that are needed. So we're able to confirm their hours and their scope.
Okay, so it's quite a bit different than going out for bid on the construction of a new road, for instance?
Yes, very good. Yeah.
Okay, I just
Great question.
wanted to clarify that, make sure members of the public would be clear on that as well.
Yeah, thanks. Just following up in that, Josh. Unlike the construction contract, which might be a firm fixed price, this is more time and materials. And if we get halfway through it and we only need one person, you have the ability within the contract to say, hey, I don't need that person anymore.
100% correct. Yes.
So we're not rephrasing. We are not committing to this full amount based on this. This is kind of a do not exceed.
Very good clarification.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions on this? Sounds good.
Great.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, guys.
Staff is slipping me notes from the back table, and they said that they would prefer it to bring forward the parking issue on February 19th. That way you all hopefully will be here. And also, if you decide to move forward, it gives staff more time to do their work. Okay? Does that make sense?
Or no, 2 weeks. No, next week.
Yeah, the parking.
Next week.
So next week?
Yeah, yeah, I have little notes. Okay, all right, so we'll all be here and that also gives, if in fact it does go forward, it gives staff more time to do the work.
Okay,
Okay,
sounds good.
all right.
That worked out better.
Okay, so now, no big deals here. We've got parking, we've got $10 million road, and now we have a water systems plan. And this is Charlie and Diane, financial analysis.
That's right. So now we're on to the exciting part of the evening. As Debbie would say, it's all about the financial side of the water system. And When we wrap up a water system plan or functional plan, the last thing that we look at is how do we pay for the capital program? How do we make sure over the next 6 to 10 years that we're paying adequately for our operating cost? And what Charlie will focus on tonight is sharing with you the results of a financial analysis that city staff and Gray and Osborne performed to make sure that our water system is healthy from a financial perspective. I want to let you know up front, there's two things that we'll talk about. The first one is the monthly rates that our citizens pay and what that needs to be in order for our water system to be healthy. The second thing is what developers pay when they purchase a connection, when they go to build a house or a piece of infrastructure that has equivalent residents in the building and usage. When we walked through this, it was about 20 minutes for the monthly rate portion, and it was about 15 minutes for the developers portion. There's a pause in between and an opportunity for questions, but I just want to give you an idea of that's the level of discussion that we anticipate on this upfront. I know it's a long night.
Cool. Yeah, so as Diane mentioned, we'll look at some rate alternatives and then some recommendations on both rates and general facility charge. A little bit of where the water system plan currently is. It's been submitted to Department of Health and it's currently in their queue for review. So we have the draft plan put together. It's available on the planning's website for their comprehensive plan update. And I would anticipate that it's going to be in Department of Health hands for the next 3 to 6 months while they work on it. This information is just background as a reminder. We shared a lot of this with you back in September. It's kind of the technical side of the water system. And we did the analysis with support from our consultant, and we kind of followed the Department of Health requirements for what goes into a water system plan as far as growth, storage, future projections. It also ties in with the planning's growth projections for the future to make sure that our capital program can support the growth within the city that they are planning for. Our water system is fairly complicated for the size of the city. It's about 8 different pressure zones, a number of wells at different well sites. We got about 90 miles of water main, serve on average about 1 million gallons per day, and it's all managed by 4.5 FTEs in our water department from Public Works' side. This is a look at our capital program, which you guys have seen before. It's broken up into near and long-term projects for the purpose of the financial analysis. So near-term projects are within the next 10 years, and long-term projects are within the 10 to 20-year period. And I will say that we took a pretty hard look at pushing projects off to make the financial as affordable as possible and still meet the growth targets that we are required to meet under the kind of planning projection. So a couple of definitions which are important to keep in mind as we talk about this. ERU is equivalent residential unit, and we assume that's basically what a single family house is representative of as far as demand. And so we convert commercial and multifamily into ERUs for just a basis of comparison when we're talking about water. GFC is the general.
Charlie, just real quick. Since we have mandates on ADUs going forward now, is that factored into single family residence for this?
Yeah, so right now we are considering previously our ADU code. We didn't charge a separate connection for ADUs or anything like that. It was just wrapped up into a single family. I think we've done some initial, and it wasn't me, it was my coworker Michael who put a memo together to look at with the first ADU, if it's under a certain size, it would fall under the single family, just 1 ERU basis. And if it gets to be the second ADU, which is allowed under the new codes, or it's a larger size, then it may trigger like a partial ERU factor. But we haven't quite flushed all that out and hasn't been presented. So yeah. I'd also say that I don't think there's very many, we haven't seen very many ADUs, so it's not a huge impact to the analysis at this point. So GFCs are the general facility charges or the connection fees. And they're based on the number of ERUs, and it's what the developer pays. It's a one-time fee that they pay to connect to our system. So the first time they make a connection, they pay whatever the GFC is at that time. And then CPI-U is the consumer price index for urban consumers. And our code relies on CPI-U for annual rate adjustments and other adjustments year to year. And we do use the Seattle Bellevue region. So now getting into the rates a little bit. Couple different goals for the water system. The primary goal for any water system is to provide safe drinking water to the citizens of the city. But when we're talking about financial side of things, there's a few financial goals that we need to take into consideration when we're looking at the financial analysis of the utility. So the first one is the council's goal to maintain an operating balance to cover 2 months of operations. The second goal is to have water sale revenue cover our operating expenses. And then we want to make sure that our water rights are reasonable and comparable to other jurisdictions within the area. So the first thing is what our current water rate is and how it compares to current jurisdictions in the area. There's the calculation for how we actually determine what our water rate is per month. If you're interested, it's a base rate and a commodity charge based on how much water you use. For the purposes of this, 700 cubic feet is assumed to be a single family house for majority of jurisdictions. And so that's what that rate table on the right reflects. It's kind of if those customers use 700 cubic feet, that's what they would get charged per month. And so you can see we are about $38.61 currently, and we're on the low end of average for the region.
Yeah, especially because Bremerton has a reservoir and they're at 36. So, I mean, we are really at the low end.
Yep. And I think part of that is we haven't raised our last water rate increase other than CPI-U was in 2015. So it's been about 10 years. It has been 10 years. This is just looking at that a little bit different. So the yellow line there just represents the average and the different jurisdictions, and we're below the average for our monthly rate. So when we did the financial analysis, we took 3 different scenarios into consideration. Scenario 1's the status quo, or what would happen if there's no rate increase. Scenario 2 is a one-time rate increase and a one-time GFC increase. And then scenario 3 is a incremental rate increase and a one-time GFC increase. So incremental rate increase means spread out over a number of years to kind of mitigate the impact. The assumptions there were used in all of the scenario, so we didn't change those base assumptions so that we're kind of comparing apples to apples. Look at what I think we've mentioned it or alluded to it before when we presented the budget previously, but the water fund is currently operating at a deficit, and under the status quo scenario, it continues to operate at a deficit as far as operating expenses exceed operating revenues for the study period. The scenario, there is no impact to the ratepayers, but there's likely to be a result in the decrease in level of service, and we're not able to fund the capital program past 2034, basically draw down all of our reserves. And
Next.
yep, so just want to give you guys that as a baseline.
Next.
So this line here is the operation subtotal, and you can see we're negative across the time period. Yep. So scenario 2 is a one-time rate increase and a one-time GFC increase. And so the way this was basically this scenario represents what would it take to implement a rate increase to bring the operations and revenues or operations and expenses back into balance. So that ends up being a 15% rate increase in 2025. A $500 GFC increase. It's a significant impact to ratepayers, and it does bring the fund back into balance. So that's what's shown on this one here. You can see kind of in the middle of the table there for operations, it goes from negative to positive immediately and stays positive. So, but a big increase.
Mr. McVeigh.
So Charlie, could we be misleading people there possibly by saying if we do a 15% rate increase in 2025, it's one time? I mean, we're not saying we're never going to raise the rates again, right?
Right, so that's based on this scenario with those assumptions we've put in there.
Okay.
And it's only for the 10-year period that we're looking at there. And I say something else.
Okay, see, so we would be committing to not raising them for 10 years. Is that right?
I think that's a good thing to point out. Every year rates go up based on CPIU. That's an
Okay.
automatic rate increase that happens every year, just like inflation happens every year. The CPIU happens every year.
Okay. Well, we might want to just change the language there a little bit. It does seems people could think you said you were just going to do it one time, right? And just somehow maybe we could clarify that. I think it'd be helpful.
No, I think it's fair. Yep.
And one just quick, I want to confirm that that 15% increase would bring it to 44 something, which is right at the average of the previous slide, right? And just under.
So we move your microphone over there.
Are you talking about, so this is the rate alternatives. You're talking about the monthly rate, is that right?
Yeah, the monthly rate would be right on par with the average of that. The first slide you showed where.
Yeah, so that's there. So the region average $43 currently, and if we did a 15% increase, it'd be about 44. So it'd be $1.50 plus or minus above the average. Yep.
Yeah, could you give me 2 sentences? I'm trying to limit because of time. $500 for the increase for the connection charge. Does our connection charge based on what's typically we see in utilities, is it ballpark for connection charge? Are we low or are we high? I.e., should we be getting more because we're connecting people and they're buying into our infrastructure? Where are we at in that piece of the?
So I can jump ahead a little bit and show you that if you want. To answer that question really simply, we are lower than average. Most people have a higher connection charge.
So now it's Silverdale. Wow.
So I guess in that standpoint, the newcomers, did you evaluate other than $500? Because that doesn't, the usage charge we're bringing us in line with the average. This looks like we're going to be still below the average.
Right, and it's important to note that the connection charge has to be used for capital. It can't fund operations. And what we've got going on in the analysis is an operational deficit. So the capital program.
Need it for capital costs, right?
Well, and we would use it for capital costs, but it wouldn't solve we'd still be drawing
Wouldn't
our
solve the
operations.
operation problem.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's why you're only recommending a $500 increase.
And I think we
is that right?
could, if we wanted to look at what raising it to say like $1,000 a month, looks like we could definitely bring that forward to you guys in the future as well.
So just a little check-in here. Tonight's a workshop. We're presenting the results of our analysis and our recommendation. And then what I would suggest is if you have other alternatives that you want us to look at, we can absolutely do that. We have a spreadsheet. We can run different numbers and provide different options. When we look at designing a financial model, we design it so operating revenue covers operating expenses. And we design the connection fee to cover our capital program. That's our goal in the design.
You have listed on one of your slides mentioning the program for lower rates. Do you know what the utilization is of that? And then the reason I'm asking is that's not tied into the connection fee. That's only the rates, right?
That's only the rates, right?
Okay.
And we did last year expand that program. We brought the income threshold up pretty significantly. I think prior to that, I want to say we had about 50 people taking advantage of it.
Great.
But I'm not sure because I think that went into effect in December.
Okay.
And I don't know that there's been that much more customers.
Yeah, I'm just curious if it's whatever our population's at the poverty line, if we're getting close to covering 50% of that with making sure that they know that program's available. And then just if that percentage, let's say like everybody who's under the poverty line takes advantage of that program, would these financial models still stand?
Yeah, and it's not, just to clarify, I think it was 50 accounts, not 50%. Okay, so I just want to make sure that's clear. Yeah, it's not very utilized, I
We're
would
kind
say.
of free forming it tonight. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. So I had the opportunity to visit with Diane and Charlie on this very thorough work. I'm very impressed. And Doug, I'm glad you bring that up because that low income break is going to be in there and it did increase. So that helps mollify, especially for those who are hard pressed by a rate increase. I think scenario 3 makes the most sense for the reasons that are pretty obvious. One of the slides had a point, and one of the reasons I want to remark on this right now, 2 slides back, it talked about presuming the utility tax that the city charges at 12%. And I just want to take a moment, Mayor, to revisit the history on that. Over the course of the last 30, 40, 50 years, it's varied greatly. As high as close to 25%. We worked very hard 15, 16 years ago to incrementally drop that down to 6% and put the city on a diet. There was a hardship period, including the financial recession, where the city and the council were shoulder to shoulder on making sure we did not have an undue negative impact on our base core services. And so we increased that utility tax back up to 12. It was a soft policy of the council at that time that we would then, over the ensuing budget periods, drop it from 12 to 10 to 8 with a target of trying to get back to 6. In fact, we've left it at 12%. So here's my thought, Mayor. With an eye toward the Public Works facility and the demands on that and creating viability around that, because there's obviously a need, that we look at scaling back that utility tax. And the reason I'm bringing it up right now with the water rate structures, I asked both Diane and Charlie, if we scale that back, does that have any impact on this modeling? And they said no.
No, it just has an impact on the general fund.
Yes, and here's my remark on that, that we give some thought, not tonight, to scaling back and then banking that money for Public Works facility. And that we look at that across some of the other enterprises as well. So we begin to bootstrap our way, not just relying on bond to get to that Public Works facility. So I'm just parking that as a thought, Mayor.
Okay, so I guess I want to get back to one thing, and it's the kind of the recommended alternative that that staff's recommending, and it's a 6% rate increase in 25, 27, and 29. So kind of a 3-6% rate increases spread out over about 6 years. Other scenarios are definitely feasible to make that happen. But one of the things that this does is it allows the future rate increases to be adjusted based on actual numbers in the future. So when we go in 2027 in 2 years to do a rate increase, our financial model is a projection that's, by 2029, it's already 4 years out of date. And so we could refine it a little bit in the future and actually dial down what that rate increase would be, which is why this is one of the recommended options. And so I guess I would just throw that out there and just want to make sure that that's our recommended alternative for now, but we can look at some other alternatives if that's something that you guys want.
Are you guys tracking this? Does this sound appropriate? Are you okay?
Yeah, my question, I guess, would be, are we prepared to move this to the consent agenda, or do we want it on the business agenda?
Well, it depends on, go ahead.
I was gonna say, there's a few other steps to do a rate increase. One of them, it'll be an ordinance that's brought forward. There has to be a public hearing. And so there's a few
That
other
answers
steps.
that question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All right,
So-
thank you.
And just to add to that a little bit, it's been the city's practice to take it through that process and have a public hearing. It's not required by code,
Yeah.
but it is something that we do and we think is a good idea. We would recommend doing that on this one as well.
It impacts just everybody in the city. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you still want to go, do you want to go through the general facility section still yet?
Yeah, and I
Um,
think I heard that one of the things you guys want to see is to see what the impact of raising that
Yeah.
more in line with the average, closer to $1,000 would be.
So do we want to give a one recommendation at the end, or do we want to give a rate recommendation and then a GFC recommendation? Kind of, around.
I don't know if you guys are all right.
I'm comfortable doing it either way.
Go ahead.
I was gonna see, could we consider a senior and low income discount for the GFC hookup? With the, since we're doing an increase, would it be an appropriate time to add?
Yeah.
Let's charge to the developer.
Charge to the.
There's no low income.
No, it's,
I was
yeah,
gonna
it's
say-
charged
I
to the
was gonna
person
say.
building the house, and unfortunately, low
Well,
income
I
people
imagined it's like
can't
moving into a new
build.
house. Had to
No, no,
pay
no,
to-
no,
no.
Turn it-
No, no,
turn it
no.
on.
This is
No.
actually for.
Great.
it's like
Well,
an
do we have
impact
any
fee.
low-income developers?
It's like an impact fee, and that's why it only can be used for capital.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, I don't understand why they don't just call it an impact fee. It's the same.
It,
same
it sort of feels like we might need a little bit more analysis on the GFC number to me. I mean, I
Mhm.
think what you're hearing is that we're leaning towards raising it past the $500. What the exact number should be, I think we
So-
still.
We can give you the bookends. We've got an analysis that'll just show you what the bookends are, and then maybe you can get some more feedback on that.
So basically, the slides walk through the components of the GFC. It's specified in an RCW. It's based on values, and you add up all the separate components. And I'll kind of skip to the chase here. Our maximum allowable GFC based on the RCW would be in the range of $8,900 with all the various components that are authorized, following the methodology laid out in the RCW. So we're well below the allowable GFC. And even with the $500 increase, we're a little bit below the region average for the
That's good.
GFC.
That's good. Go ahead.
So Diane, Charlie, I would defer to you guys as the stewards of the infrastructure to take a look at this. Anytime we're below the average, then that gives you a question to, should we be at the average? What are they doing differently? I think what sparked the conversation is you've got over $30 million worth of investments coming at us to be able to support the growth. Making sure that the added capacity is truly being captured by the connection charges would be, I think, what we're asking you to make double check.
Yeah. I think one important thing to note too is our connection charges include, or we do current connection charges for water, sewer, and stormwater, as well as traffic. Some of those other jurisdictions that have higher connection charges are solely water districts.
Defer to the people that
Yeah.
own the spreadsheets and their stewards.
Yeah,
Give us
got
the
it.
recommendation. I think most of us are
Yep, it is what
confident
it
in
is.
your abilities.
Yeah, that's why I was kind of asking, do you want us to wait till the end? Because, like Doug said, yeah, we have almost 34 million in planned capital in the 20-year period. So does the $500 increase get us to that goal? Does it need to be more to get us to that goal? I mean, that's, I think, kind of what he's saying. That's where I'm at is you tell us what we need to do to get there, or what can we absorb? And then we need to find other funding to get there. I think that's where I'm at
Yes,
least.
gotcha.
So one quick thing, we estimate the number of connections that are going to happen a year, and we estimate those to be about 100. So that's an assumption, and you all know as well as we do, the economy changes and that impacts development in the building industry. So if we have couple of years where there's 10 homes or 20 homes, the connection fees are not high enough. They're based on an average of about 100. I think what we're hearing is that council might be comfortable with a slightly higher connection fee, and staff would be happy to support that. The other thing that we keep in mind when we look at the connection fees is we have a very high sewer connection fee. So when the developer comes in, they pay almost $16,000 for a sewer connection, which is really high. And so some of our other utilities, if we can keep them a little bit lower, I think it makes us more inviting to the industry, and Heather would likely have some input on that for the economy in Poulsbo. But I think a slight increase might make sense based on what we're hearing.
We're not here, this is just single family home. What about the ERUs for like our apartment buildings?
Yeah, so the apartment buildings are charged per unit with a reduction factor, and so the connection charges for a large apartment building are substantial.
Are substantial. So.
Yeah.
Well, I would say even 500, looking at your other chart, puts us at 6115, which is still $600+ below the average. If we went to 750, increase. We're still below the average, and that gets us a little more towards the connection fee without also dramatically increasing the cost of new homes, which we want to try to keep homes as affordable as possible.
Yep.
So I would be comfortable with a slightly higher, maybe at 750, if that's something that you think we can support. It's still, like I said, it still keeps us below the average.
Okay, good feedback.
Yep.
Okay.
I think the final kind of question is, it sounds like we're fine with the incremental rate increase. Is that a mid-year or start 2026, January 1st?
Yeah, I mean, which work, I mean, can you do, I mean, can you
Uh,
do it mid-year, what?
Our recommendation is mid-year.
Yeah.
Okay,
that'd be
mid-year.
great.
Yeah, mid-year.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Scenario 3, based on what you just said.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
That's good. Thank you, guys.
That's good.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Okay, that was the last one. We have continued questions and concerns of the council. Go ahead, Britt.
Just something that came to mind when we were having the parking conversation. And this is ancillary. This isn't particularly about parking, but when we were talking about possibly getting a contract with the Lutheran Church for those 16 spots, and you mentioned, Mayor, that the Moe Trail is right there.
Yeah.
I'm wondering when that was last kind of assessed, maintained.
We did, actually, Jeff, is Jeff here? Can you talk about the Moe Street Trail?
Just because, I mean, I've used it, but I'm thinking about, I don't know, is there any lighting? Is there anything that would make that easier? If there's going to be regular
Walking up and down.
people walking up and down, I think it could be safer.
So I'm pitching it to Public Works as well, but that we worked with Public Works and they did a phenomenal job to clean up the trail for the steps and add a safety railing as well, and then trim back the hedge. Also fix the staircase that goes down to the street. And part of the risk management grant we applied for, if we had full funding, we would have done more, but those were the most essential components. Right at this time, there's no intention to further improve that park until we know what's happening with 3rd Street, is my understanding. It has potential. My dream, just speaking for myself, is that's a beautiful, and I know we don't do pocket parks, but it's already a trail, it's already established, is to put some native plantings, some seats up there so people can meander up and zigzag up, because it is very steep. And it has a beautiful overlook as you come to the top. You can see Liberty Bay. And imagine if there was a pollinator corridor right up there. I'm totally serious. I've been thinking about this for a while.
I just don't want people tripping and falling on that steep slope, mostly what I'm going for right now. But I love the pollinator.
It's like, that was one thing I don't know. I didn't know if it was lighted.
Mike is here.
Maybe.
Is it lighted?
No.
I didn't think so, yeah.
No, there's no lights there. There's no power runs up through there.
Yeah.
And it would be a big undertaking, quite a
I
project.
don't know, I
if
guess
we wanna do
I'm
that.
maybe wondering, like, is there a solar option for ground light? I'm not, you don't want to bug the neighbors.
Yeah, but they
with
never
light.
work very well either.
It looked, Doug's like,
I'm really,
Okay.
okay, you guys, I solved it. A slide. What? Benicia, California has a huge concrete slide that everyone loves using because it gets you down there quickly.
Tell me more.
Yeah, Jeff's down.
Well, you know, the
All
sport
right,
frame pipe is
next.
pretty big and it's, the water comes down quick, so.
We have extra innings.
Yeah,
Okay.
it could, I mean, get in our CIP for a larger project down the road. There's nothing in the short term anyway.
For 16 spots, it's, up at the Lutheran
Okay.
Church, it's not a huge deal. I just wanted to put it out.
continued questions. Pam, please not slides, but go ahead.
No slides. I appreciate the conversation for parking being shifted to February 19th. It is very important. And so, I do understand the need to move forward and that, there's going to be some people that are not happy as well as folks that will be pleased. As we have a discussion and a lot of people called out that first option, maybe we can massage it a little bit. And I do believe when it is shared that there's been plenty of opportunity for community comments to be shared. And I just would like for us to work with our stakeholders, our businesses, and see if there's still one final stretch for voices to be shared. It is concerning, though, to hear that there are some business owners that feel that they cannot freely share for fear of retaliation. That's a little concerning. I believe in doing something with someone and not to someone. That, you know what, I can go on my cruise with peace of mind because I will be, I'll happily lean into it. Okay.
Thank you, Pam. Okay, any other continued questions and comments from the council? Okay, comments from citizens? Any comments from citizens? Anyone? Yes?
I just would, with the 15th, the 19th, I'm just looking at what's on there and we just added the parking. And so that looks like that's gonna be another full night. I just want folks to kind of
Okay.
mentally prepare for that, because looking at, then I said, just looking at what's on there, I see times allotted, but I really don't think some of those times are gonna be what we actually spend on
Okay,
some of those subjects.
We'll take a look at it, Rick.
Yeah,
thanks.
so just, I'd say come prepared.
Okay, so with that, if there's no continued comments from citizens, we have an executive session regarding lease or purchase of real estate. It will be about 20 minutes? 10 minutes, okay? And we are not making a decision, correct? It's just a briefing or making a decision? Are they coming back? No, we're not. All right, so it'll be about 10 minutes, and it's regarding real estate transactions. So, second floor, conference room? Yeah, go, we will be adjourning out of the executive session. So when our executive session is finished, we will be adjourned.
For 10 minutes. The executive session is.
10 minutes, that's correct.
I so move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.